A march for the championship continues with some money on the line tonight and with a visit to the Peachland as we get closer to the playoffs. Live for the virtual Atlanta Motor Speedway, it's the Dash for Cash for the 2021 4-Wide Racing Cup Series and the 15th race of the regular season right here with our coverage on MaxSpeedTV. Happy to have you along for our coverage right here atop Atlanta. My name is Kenneth Bueno, joined alongside by Francisco Bacallao. And Francisco, one way Atlanta gets in the heads of drivers is through its very abrasive surface, its hot nature, and of course the grooves around it that we'll see over the course of the night. But really tonight, a lot more pressure is on a select group of drivers as they aim not only for a win, not only for playoff berths, but for a couple of cash prizes as well.
Thanks for having me up here, Kenneth. And it's an interesting night in the Atlanta Motor Speedway for us here. We're just getting closer to the end of the regular season. I believe we have 4 races remaining, and they're at completely different racetracks, which produce different challenges for these guys. And of course, Atlanta is the first stop on our sheet here tonight. One of the more iconic racetracks on the NASCAR schedule, just given the very old track surface that we have here, about 20-25 years old this surface is from. When it was last reconfigured in 1997, and it has its own character. We've seen it play out in the real life NASCAR Cup Series here, and the tires were incredibly fast, so tire management is going to be crucial here, but also just equipment management. Take care of your car itself and make sure it's in one piece so you can last the entire event.
And this track also known, of course, like you said there, for beating up those race cars. And we'll just take a better and closer look at where we are in the virtual world, courtesy of our images from Google Earth, the Atlanta Motor Speedway from Hampton, Georgia. You take a look to the East Coast, 1.5 miles around this quad oval venue with, of course, 4 turns, a good amount of banking in either corners. And you say there, the bumps, you can't see it from the top view, but it will be prominent once we have our shots on the actual track when we go racing. You'll see them bouncing around the racetrack. And of course, one thing to mention, Francisco, about this track is the multiple grooves. Recently, Iracing with the new update kind of made things a little more realistic in order to make the top lines and the middle a little bit more viable than just the bottom groove. And we see the bottom in 3 and 4 mostly being so dominant, but now we get to kind of move away from the dirty air. A lot of competitors probably looking for that, especially after one of our last events at a 1.5 mile Las Vegas as well.
Yeah, the last time we were at Las Vegas, we saw Brian Smith lead all but 5 laps en route to his victory. So will we see the same thing here tonight? I'm not entirely sold on that, just given the differences between the Las Vegas Motor Speedway and Atlanta here tonight. So it's, I'm not exactly sure what to expect here, Kenneth, but I know that we should be in for a good one if just being around this racetrack is any cues to it.
Definitely is. Sun beaming right on the track. Quickly, before we get to your starting grid, going to take a look at what our current playoff standings are. You see it round all the way to the top 13. That is because the top 10 will be the drivers to make the 2021 4-Wide Cup Series playoffs. Anybody below that will be technically on the bubble in order to try and make it. Those last 3 drivers are, in fact, in that category. Jaden Gibble, minus 30. Austin Reedy, minus 52. And Ricky Rosner back to minus 98, almost 100 points behind these guys up there. You see the guys that we've been seeing all season long. Kyle Benson, the most consistent driver, finally with a race win. He got it last week. Or at least, last week, Wednesday, he got his win on a road course. Nicholas Vazuti followed behind him, just 2 points. Craig Lounsauger, Tyler Warner, Scott Healy, Brandon Banks, all 4 of them are tied for that illustrious 3rd spot in that playoff run. A lot of these guys will be in contention, trying to look, at least some of them looking for their first, handful of them looking for more in this playoff grid. So as we look forward now to the starting lineup, we'll get to everybody on the grid. We'll see exactly where every driver and your favorite driver will be starting here tonight from the Atlanta Motor Speedway. On pole will be the 89 rather of Cole Martin. The 30.091 has set him on the pole. I believe his first start in 4-wide racing in 2021. And Brian M. Smith, the driver who dominated the last visit to a 1.5 mile Las Vegas, he ends up on the outside of row number 1.
Looking into your second row of the grid, last week's winner, Kyle Benson, in that third position, trying to go back-to-back after getting the monkey off his back. And next, alongside him, is Brandon Team Banks in that 88, who we've seen up front in the last couple races as well.
Back to row number 3, you'll find the 11 of Austin Reedy, still looking for his first win this season, ending up in the top 5. And Travis Browder in the 6th spot in the 18 will be on the outside of row 3 from the 6th running position.
Looking at Justin Mons in the 7th position for that 41, trying to get another good result here tonight. And last weekend's runner-up in Edward Scherner in the 20, trying to see if he can end up with just one spot better here today.
Back to row number 5, to complete the top 10, you'll find the 86 of Tristan Bailey and Jovi Saguiped returning in the 5 machine with a 30.274. Both of those about 0.03 of a second between each other. That'll complete your top 10 from Atlanta.
And just missing out on the top 10 is Nicholas Vazuti in the 11th position, who we saw have struggles last week, trying to improve on that and try to have a better week here today. And Ryan Steenbachers is back, and he's going to try and get himself a solid finish as well. He lines up in the 12th position.
Craig Lautenschlager, Iowa winner, will roll off from 13th, and Scott Healy will be in the 64. Dover winner, both of these drivers winning at short tracks. They will be to your row 7, back to 14th position.
Looking in 15th, Jake Roel in the 19. He's going to be in that 15th position, which is row 8 towards the back end of our field. And Ken MacArthur alongside him in that 97.
Then behind them, you'll find CJ Munier in the 25 and Eric Schaffer in the 22 to complete the top 18. We'll sit back to everybody beneath the top 20. Michael Woolley making his first start. Robert Parrott in the 6th, returning in the 20th running position. Derek Nolan and Brandon Gillis will be back to row number 11, followed by Chuck Munier, Steve Brunner in the 30 machine. Eric Stewart, Ricky Rosner will be back to 26 with Tyler Murray and Christopher Bishop to 28th. Cody Kinsey, TJ Burst to row 15. Joe Sanchez and Daytona winner Tyler Warner back to 30th. Pete Bruni and Roman Long 17 rows deep. And that will be your entire field here from the Atlanta Motor Speedway. We're ready to get things started here on MaxSpeedTV. And of course, happy that you are joining us once again. We try to complete our season all the way to the regular season, go to the playoffs, try to decide a champion. But we still have a rather long way to go. So we will have the pace car roll off with the 89 of Cole Martin and the 64 of Scott Healy ready to bring us to the green flag. Pace car make its way down to pit road. 2 Chevrolet Camaros ready to go green from Hotlanta.
Pretty even start up front. We're able to have the leaders side by side, trying to get that side draft, so no one able to get out front. Just ahead, as we actually have your pole sitter around, Kyle Benson up and over.
And Kyle Benson already up and over. You see the 89 going around, and a big hit by the 42 of Christopher Bishop, and immediately caution waves for the first time this evening, involving many of the top runners. You see the 4 of Kyle Benson with significant damage to his Ford Mustang. Already some significant trouble to start this one on lap number 1. We'll try to take a replay, see exactly where this began, and it really started off turn 2 with your leader, the 89 of Cole Martin, the pole sitter who led us to the green flag. This is off turn 2. Francisco, might have been some contact there with Brian Smith, and Kyle Benson tried to follow down. I think he also lost his race car as well. You'll see it here from the chopper cam. Both of them get out of shape, or at least Benson tries to avoid, and they go hard into the inside wall, and you'll see Bishop here get collected in a matter of moments.
Yeah, I think there was potentially a little bit of net code off turn number 2 there. I'm not sure they actually touched, and that upset both of their race cars, and it sent your pole sitter going around off the second corner of the race lap. And you see right there behind him, Kyle Benson got loose as well and had nowhere to go and up on his roof like Joey Logano a couple of weeks ago. So not the position you want to be in that first lap. And then a hard hit for the 49 of Bishop, who just came right in at the last second. So a big hit for some of these guys on lap 1, Kenneth.
A very big hit for a lot of drivers, so that will shuffle Austin Reedy to your current race lead, and things at least seem to be on that sort of side for him. I mean, at least he's going to get some free positions out of it whatsoever, knowing that he basically will be up at the front of this field. Going to get something situated for you, at least for now. Some of it right now just pretty much a little bit stuttery here on our end, so we'll be sure to fix it for you. Try to get things maybe fixed up before we get to this sort of green flag racing here from Atlanta, where we already have our first yellow of the evening, and Austin Reedy now will be leading. And already so far, I don't think we were expecting to see such an early caution, but I think like we saw at Las Vegas, Francisco, the way these cars handle, and although you have a lot of that downforce, I think, again, to reiterate what I said at Las Vegas, that you're going to be on cold tires, you're going to be in that sort of situation, and then you have those cold tires, and then for the most part, you can easily go around with just the tap of the gas since you're trying to go full throttle.
Yeah, I said it at Las Vegas, and it's true everywhere with these cup cars. The big spoiler's a deception. It's basically there to give you speed. It's not so much the grip, because the grip still comes from the tires on the car. So basically, you just have a little bit of extra speed going through the corners, but you still have to maneuver it, and it's very difficult. So the side force is allowing the cars to stay planted, and when you're in this big pack, all the air and just the disturbances of dirty air as well is what makes these cars get loose. So you'll almost never see a car on its own just break loose unless the track temperatures are just very high, which I believe
Some green flag ways get around and maybe end up where we stand here, as Austin Reedy and Tristan Bailey, the 11 and the 86, will be the next two to lead us to the green flag on lap number 5. So again, 2 Chevrolet Camaros, although Nicole Martin and Kyle Benson will have a lot more to work forward to once we move on. Pace car once again back down. We'll try to get a green flag run here as the green flag is back in the air. Barney waving it all the way to go back to turn 1. And quick off the gates goes the 11 of Reedy. He will surge ahead of the rest of the field as they head out of the first, second of corners. And you see Joey Saguipet already trying to make a move on Tristan Bailey. He's on the outside for second. Still making that charge around and already making those moves as Saguipet tries it this time around and did a little bit of side-by-side behind them. That is Jake Royale and his machine already trying to make a piece of a move to go to the inside of Tristan Bailey. He'll try to make it stick for the most part. And as for now, he's going to try to catch up to your race leader, which so far has not been plausible. And already, yellow flag comes out for the second time here tonight on lap number 6. This time involving a handful of drivers near the rear of the field, and we'll try to get a look at which drivers those are. Believe it might have been Steven Brunner in the 30 machine. That also includes Ricky Rosner in the 43. Those two ended up going around at, I believe, at the exit of turn 2 to the entrance of turn 3. So those drivers end up there. We'll try to find exactly where this began. You'll ride at least where these drivers were at before. Trying to get a look at where they were. This was coming into turn 2 on the racetrack to the back straightaway. You'll see it here. Might have been contact up ahead the road. I believe that was the 22 of Eric Schaffer, who had big time contact there on the rear end of the field. And you'll take a look at it once more here from the chopper cam. There's a loose moment out of turn 2. He gets into Brian M. Smith, and then he goes right off the racetrack. Steven Brunner gets some of the worst of it. Kyle Benson also involved in it as well. Both of them getting collected. You'll see here one more time where Schaffer gets loose up ahead the road. Take a look with the number 30 machine of Steven Brunner as this happens right in front of him.
Yeah, just gets loose off the corner, comes down, and when he hits that car to his inside, it just shoots the car back up into the racetrack, and that's what set off that wreck there. So 2 quickie yellows in the first 10 laps of this race is not exactly desirable, but there's still 160 laps to go in this race, so plenty of room to have some green flag racing here tonight.
And so in turn, that should result the lead back to, or at least to, Scott Healy, the winner at Dover. And one of the drivers that we saw use fuel strategy to get to his first win of 2021, saved fuel, and what looked to be kind of miraculous at the end in front of Kyle Benson to make it happen. And then all of a sudden, he was able to surge to the race lead still, hold on to it, and ended up taking the checkered flag out of it all. But for now, we're going to take a short commercial break on a second yellow flag on lap number 8. You're watching the 15th race of the 2021 Ford Wide Racing Cup Series from the Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Iracing is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all around the globe. Iracing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics, engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 170,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsports organizations like NASCAR to deliver virtual races based on the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, as well as many other series on the NASCAR ladder. iRacing also features team racing, providing a variety of options for members to create and manage their own teams. Race with friends or real-world teammates in full-length endurance events like the 24 Hours of Daytona, Spa 24, or the Bathurst 12-Hour. Additional partners include IMSA, World of Outlaws, Supercars, and IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own Indianapolis 500, Bathurst 1000, Chili Bowl, and many more iconic events. This is iRacing, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car. Sign up today at iracing.com.
Back live from the virtual Atlanta Motor Speedway for the 15th race of the Ford Wide Racing Cup Series, ready to go back racing after two quick yellows, one on lap 1, one on lap number 6. So a handful of drivers up in the front have been involved in incidents. Scott Healy will be your new race leader, followed by Michael Woolley. So again, another new set of drivers to row number 1. Kenneth Wynn and Francisco Bacalhau along with you for the ride. Had a little bit of our technical issues, but we are nonetheless back up and running and ready to bring you more coverage for the rest of this race all the way to lap 127. Pace car comes all the way down. The 64 of Scott Healy and the 69 of Michael Woolley will lead us back to the green flag on lap number 11.
And a good jump there for Scott Healy. He's able to get clear as he's going to turn number 1, the top 2 clear actually, and they're side by side from third on back. And right now Healy is in a good spot with the clean air. He has exactly what he wants, and now we have another wreck off turn number 2.
And this one is Tyler Murray, but even more collection all the way up in the front of the field, at least through the midsection. Saw a couple drivers get into incidents. I believe that includes the 9 of Brandon Gillis, the 97 of Ken MacArthur. And so quickly enough, we're getting yellow after yellow after yellow. They do say cautions do breed cautions. And for now, we remain under that sort of situation here as we'll try to take a look at where this might have began between a lot of these drivers. So we'll take a look. We'll get a replay here from, this is the 97 of Ken MacArthur. It actually happens right in front of him. There were 2 separate incidents to watch for here. You'll see Pete Bruni go right into the back of, I believe that was the 25 machine that got involved in that. And Tyler Murray, who went around all by himself. Take a look at this. This is coming off of turn 2, and just again, Francisco, I'm not sure whether he had help. His car really got loose. Actually did get a tap. He goes around, and then everything seems to ensue right in front of him.
Yeah, that was one incident, and then we had a completely separate incident involving a couple other cars that started in the middle of the backstretch going into 3. And that's what collected several cars. Right here, you see the 20 in that Tony Stewart scheme. go around out of nowhere. I'm not sure what exactly happened to him, but he was just careening across the track, and you see the track became blocked and several cars running into each other. So tough sledding for everybody in these first couple laps. That's already 3.
And that was the 20 of Edward Schur. To note also as well, one of the drivers that we saw finish well at the Charlotte Roval last week. You see a collection of cars. That was also your pole sitter, the 89 of Cole Martin, the 75 Nicholas Vazuti. You see Ricky Rosner able to slow down just enough, or at least just in time, to get around this mess. And you see it once more from Schur's view, just going around, and I believe he might have got tagged as they were walking through. Take a look here from the driver of the 43. This is Ricky Rosner slowing all the way down for a wreck. Watch how close he gets. Bit of contact, just a little drifts, but easily able to navigate around Edward Schur, and already slow enough to get around the other drivers involved in this incident. So already, again, we're seeing a lot of quick yellows, and I think this is possibly a pure contrast, Francisco, from what we already saw at Las Vegas a couple weeks back. There was a quick yellow, maybe some quick yellows, but we were able to settle into a long green flag run relatively quickly. But as for now, it seems as though nobody's really able to do that just yet. A lot of guys packed in together, and also a lot of cautions to follow as well.
Yeah, if I didn't know any better, these guys are racing like if they're at Iowa. A lot of cautions here early in this race, and we'll have to see if it continues being that way.
So Scott Healy maintains himself with the race lead. Michael Woolley, who was on the outside of row number 1 on that restart, he still maintains second. Austin Reedy, Jovi Sagwiped, Craig Lautenslager, the end of your top 5. And I know there is a larger story at Spectrum here, Francisco, because I know you're looking at right now what is currently the 2021 NASCAR Cup Series field with the Chevrolet Camaro ZL11 Elite, the Ford Mustang GT, and the Toyota Camry. But I think the biggest thing that a lot of people probably are focusing on right now, on not only in real life but on the Iracing series, Francisco, is the release of the 2022 Next Gen NASCAR Cup Series cars. And we had kind of been looking at this ever since 2019, where they had a little bit of a teaser. They had already known, at least most people had already known, that there was going to be a revision of the NASCAR Cup Series car, and there was going to be a completely different look in terms of what it was supposed to be 2021, but due to the pandemic was moved to 2022. And as for the Pro Invitational that was ran today, or is still being run today at the Darlington Raceway, they're using those new Cup cars, and they just randomly popped into the iRacing service. So now we're running current Cup cars, Francisco, with the next gen ones already out.
Yeah, I mean, you and I were actually talking on Discord just before this race, and you mentioned it to me, and well, we both bought our respective manufacturers. I bought the Toyota Camry, you bought the Chevrolet Camaro, and I was able to test it out for a couple laps around the Homestead Miami Speedway. And let me tell everybody who hasn't had the opportunity to both find out that it's been released and or buy it yet, it has been incredibly fun to drive. The sequential gearing is something that you have to get used to. The engine sounds amazing, and it's a little bit twitchier than the current Cup cars. That is it's a fun aspect to have in these cars, because you still have a big package like this where you have a lot of downforce and a little bit less horsepower than even these cars do. So overall, it's a little slower, but it's twitchier, so you still have to drive the car. I would say it's a little bit more of a challenge than these current Cup cars are right now. But in my limited experience with those cars just a couple minutes before this race, Kenneth, I'm very hopeful as to what the next-gen cars have to offer, if it's anything like what I've tested.
Can't wait to see hosted sessions with the current Cup cars versus the new next gen. But nonetheless, we have our current ones right here taking the green flag on lap number 16 of 127. As you see, the 64 of Scott Healy already diving back into turn number 1. He'll get the clear run out of turn 2. Austin Reedy, though, looking for the inside on Michael Woolley. He'll get it for second.
Hopefully we can get a couple laps under the green flag here, and the top 2 are set of the way. And look at that throwback. That number 11 going back to the 1970s. That's a pretty sick throwback.
Yeah, definitely one of the more likely throwbacks, and of course part of Throwback Week in NASCAR, as this weekend the NASCAR Cup Series, Xfinity Series, Truck Series, or at least for the Xfinity Series Cup Series mostly, we're seeing everybody throw out their throwback paint schemes, throwback logos, throwback everything on the sim, and of course in the real motorsports world. And for the 11 Austin Reed. I think this is his time this week to show some of those throwback colors with the Budweiser on his hood. He is clear of the rest of the field, but as for behind them, a bunch of drivers, again, involved in an incident. We see the 79 Ryan Steenbacher's a little bit slow on the apron, and there has been another caution thrown on the racetrack. So, once again, we find more drivers in trouble. See Nick Vazuti, I think he may have still had this damage before, but we'll try to take a look at where this might have began and whether it did involve the 75 of Vazuti. This is him running all by himself. He already did have this damage, so this was something that happened up at the front of this field, and I reckon it might have happened. There it is right there with Tristan Bailey in the 86 machine. He ends up going around onto the back straightaway. And you'll see here actually a big flip, though. I believe that was Launsauger that actually went up and over. And you saw it there on the first lap with Kyle Benson, and he got tagged, and then he just goes right up in the air. Launsauger with an awkward flip and goes tumbling over the track. And he's probably the one that got the worst out of it.
For sure. I mean, he ended up on the backstretch fence there. I mean, it's been a rather hectic start to this race. We've already had 2 flips, and it's not even lap 20 yet, Kenneth. I mean, right there you see Bailey came up the racetrack just a tad, not up clear, and they were 3 wide, and into the fence goes the 13. And I believe he landed on top of a car there on the hood of somebody. I'm not sure who that was, but when he was careening down the racetrack after hitting the fence, he did land on somebody's hood. You see right there the 69 had a bit of a moment. They are all having a bit of a moment, but unfortunately not clear. And look at that view of the fence and then the wall. And then right there, he landed on someone's hood.
That was Brandon Gillis, and he went right over. I think reminiscent to Joey Logano, Bubba Wallace at Talladega a couple weeks back. You see the flip once more, but it was contact up ahead the road between 2 drivers who were actually running in the top 5, Tristan Bailey and Michael Woolley. You'll see it here. They get into contact coming out of turn 2. They were going 3 wide. You see Joey Sagwiped make the move over for 3rd, and then Tristan Bailey kind of moves up the racetrack, gets in that nose, and then all of a sudden they both go around. Bailey goes into the inside wall. I believe Woolley might have got some of the best out of it, a little bit of contact, but able to mostly keep his car alive and stable with some minimal damage. And for now, he currently rides all the way back in the 20th running position. You see him right there on track. He just burned up his faster pair, so indeed, we have a couple drivers already quick on the gun for that faster pair in the opening laps of this race. And I'd say Francisco, although Las Vegas had posed some green flag runs, and with the way drivers have used the fast pairs here so early in comparison, do you have to start worrying if you're those drivers in the back that you've already had to burn up your fast pair in the first 20 laps of this race, knowing that you still have about 147 more to go?
I think you have to kind of deal with it. I mean, it's unfortunate, and you hate having to resort to a faster pair, especially before lap 100 in this race, but it is what it is. And sure, you might not have that a little safeguard there with you in which you can just check the faster pair and have an instant new car if you do get in a wreck. But by that same token, you could go with the rest of this race and not have a problem. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen, but it is partly up to you and partly up to the others, and that's what racing's all about. But I do want to go back and see if we can get a replay from the onboard view of Justin Mons, because he had an excellent save down towards the inside, avoiding that wreck, and he got really close to that inside wall. And it reminded me of Bubba Wallace at Pocono last year, if you remember, in one of those wrecks. He got really close to that inside wall.
And we'll try to see here as Mons, this was on the caution lap. This is slowing down for it. You'll take a look at it once he goes around. I think he made a little bit of a fake out of pit road, but this is him currently running on the racetrack. I believe this is right after the incident. So take a look here. This is on board with the 41 of Justin Mons. The wreck happens right in front of him. Wow, what a way to avoid Tristan Bailey swiveling down the racetrack. And for Justin Mons, that sends him to the 3rd running position on the racetrack. So for him, getting out of trouble was the big payoff out of it all. And the 41 will be pushing your current race leader, Austin Reedy, back to the green flag this time by.
And look at who's in second, Jovi Sagwaped. We saw him have the fastest long run car at Dover, and it had not been for trouble with a lap car. That was very unfortunate. That probably would have been a race win for him. But he is back, and he's in the 2nd position early on despite these yellows. But I'm willing to bet if we do get a long run, he'll be up there with the rest of them.
Well, he'll be running the outside, has already made a couple power moves up there. And if you recognize the driver on the outside of row 2, the 16 of Brian Smith, yes, your eyes do not deceive you. He is back to the front of the field after being set back in an early incident on the opening lap. So he has another shot to try and take the race lead away and try at least to be dominant like he was at the Sin City a couple of weeks ago. Pace car will make its way back down to pit road on lap number 22. Still a very, very long way to go from the end of this race here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. But quick on the gas goes Austin Reedy. Green flags in the air. We're back underway from Hotlanta.
Huge wheel spin from 6th on back on that outside lane. It was one of the Bass Pro Shop machines back there. But look at this. Jovi Sagopet trying to get to the inside with the crossover in 1 and 2, and he's going to get there. He's going to be side by side off the corner. Justin Mons tried to get to his inside. The 5 might have lost a little bit of momentum, and now they're racing from 2nd on back. So a close call there for your race leader who almost gave up the crossover. But look at this. We have 5 cars under a blanket here for the top spot.
And that is Jake Royale. You see him in the 19 or otherwise running the 9. A sort of Chase Elliott reminiscent Camaro right there behind Justin Mons. He's giving that shove all the way back to turn 1, and Reedy using all the way up to the outside wall, but Justin Mons peeking his nose to the inside. What a move by the driver of the 41. He may be about even as he settles back for 2nd, but there is a tight battle for 3rd on back.
And you have to remember, with iRacing's Season 2 build updates, this track now has a lot of different grooves, and you're seeing it pay off right here. Guys going all the way to the bottom, guys going to the middle, guys going to the top. It gives everybody an option, and definitely as the tires wear, you want to get higher and higher and higher just because you're able to keep the momentum, keep your foot on the throttle a lot longer than on the bottom, and you also have less wheel going into it. So early in the run, you do want to be a little bit lower because it is just the natural, quickest way around. But as this run progresses, the top could become a factor, and you actually might end up wanting to run there. But the 9 loose from trying to take over that 2nd spot. He's able to hang on to it for now, and he's going to slide down into the back end of the top 5. What a great save there, as we also saw Brian M. Smith get sideways but able to overtake him.
Oh, fantastic save by the driver of the 19, and we saw this here at Las Vegas, trying to rip different lines, and his car did not want to settle stable at all. His car was pretty much all over the racetrack, trying to keep it straight. Struggled with that at Las Vegas and may have to struggle with it here tonight on this opening segment of this race. Meanwhile, battle for 2nd ensues. Brian M. Smith passes his nose to the inside. He goes by for the 2nd position over Justin Mons. 2 of them have spread away from everybody else as Austin Reedy has developed at about an 1/8 of a second gap over the rest of this field. Continues to rip the top. Meanwhile, a lot of battles here beneath 11th. Back to the top 15. Couple drivers almost going 3 wide.
A lot of racing going on throughout the field, and that's one of the things you like about this racetrack is that no matter where you are, there's always going to be a battle with somebody somewhere, and especially when you look deep in the field, just the amount of dirty air, nobody's really able to just have a good enough race car to really have the handling to go anywhere. I mean, you're just in this turbulent air that's going on all over the place. But there we see Brian M. Smith clear for that 2nd spot, trying to hunt down your race leader. Justin Mons trying to fight back, but he did lose that position, and I believe Sagwipet has worked his way back up into 4th, and he's going to try and make up those positions that he had lost. Actually, no, he's not in 4th. He's still battling for that spot with that number 9, but at least we've got I think we've already gone into about a 10-lap run here, Kenneth, so we're already seeing more green flag laps in this run alone than we had in any point in this race combined.
And if you think about drivers on long green flag runs at 1.5 mile venues, and to think once again, the last time we were at a intermediate track was at Las Vegas. Sort of a similar track, a lot smoother, of course, on the surface than here at Atlanta. Of course, we have a lot more bumps at this racetrack, but you usually have hot track temperatures since you're in the desert in Las Vegas. And of course, you have to deal with sort of a slick race car for a good amount of the event. And for long runs, we had touted that the 16 of Brian M. Smith was easily one of, if not the best driver on the long runs, and that's what really enabled him to kind of stretch his way away from everybody else in the field and keep himself in the race lead in order to take a dominating victory away. He is slowly now carving into the lead that Austin Reedy has built up. We talk about some of the short run weakness that the 16 of Brian M. Smith has, but over the long run, you really want to focus on him, especially if you're looking at him from the rearview mirror, and that's what the 11's doing right now.
The only difference between Las Vegas and now, Kenneth, is that he doesn't have the track position. He never lost the lead on the racetrack, as we would like to say. at Las Vegas and for position. It was only during green flag pit stops. But right now, he doesn't have the clean air on his race car to try and make a pass. So he's going to have to work for this. And as we know in racing, catching is one thing, passing is another. So there you go. He's going to try a different line to see if he can get any momentum. And he's actually in the preferred line right here. If he can get a good enough of a run off the final corner, he can maybe try and make some sort of move into the next corner. But he didn't get enough of a run through the center. But he's going to have to try that again. And now you see them both go to the top. Also, really trying to take his line away, but a little bit better run by the 16. He will have the 41 trying to contend to his inside. So if he can keep the 41 behind him and make this a solo battle for the lead, he might be able to get 5 if he's patient enough.
That's also what you have to wonder here, and also to take note that these drivers are also fighting with dirty air. The fact that these Cup Series cars develop so much of that behind them. Obviously, for Reedy, it's a lot better for him to handle the car knowing that he has clean air up in front. But for guys like Smith, for guys like Justin Mons, if they're running the same line as Reedy, they may have to fend even worse than they would if they were in clean air. But they will slow down for now. Lap 32, we have a caution on the racetrack, our third one of the evening. And we're trying to find at least where this wreck might have happened in the rear of the field. We see Ricky Rosser just a tad slow. He got into the second incident there just barely in his Chevrolet Camaro, so we'll try to find out exactly where this might have developed here, and possibly with the driver of that 43. So we'll try and take a look, see exactly where things began. But as for the most part, doesn't seem to be anyone else that we probably stay concerned with. Actually, there's Cole Martin down pit road. But as for everybody else in terms of incident, you didn't see much anywhere else in terms of the wreckage on the field here. At least a little bit of trouble trying to get ourselves there. You see a lot of drivers in the pack between about 11th through 15th. Maybe it could have sporadically came from this segment of cars, but for the most part, it doesn't seem to be the case of this caution. I believe it might have been Austin. Oh, there it is, Tyler Murray. He ends up in an incident here off of turn 4. So here is where it began. This is between himself and Tyler Warner. Tyler Warner gets into the outside wall, smacks the 8 machine. Seems as though it was Tyler Warner going around that really set things off here.
Yeah, it happened towards the back end of the field for the last couple spots, but it is feeding time right now on pit road. Everyone's coming in to take 4 tires and fuel, and that's going to be the name of the game, Kenneth, because honestly, there's going to be no other strategy at Atlanta. Every time you pit, it's going to be 4 tires and fuel.
So as for everybody on a semi-long run, it is definitely going to be the 4 tires and the fuel on their race cars. So Brian Smith will try to lead everybody out first. And as for everyone, you see Ricky Rosser ending up staying out. But as for Justin Mons, he will be the first out of pit road. Out of a very topsy-turvy exit from the top 5, Ken MacArthur ends up second, Cody Kinsey third, Kyle Benson back to the 4th position, and Scott Healy to your top 5. And I believe there may have been an issue, Francisco, with the driver who was catching up to Austin Reedy for the race lead. Brian M. Smith may have disconnected at the end of this. He doesn't seem to be showing anywhere in the telemetry. So as for the driver who was trying to chase the race lead, well, he's going to have a hard time trying to come back, or maybe if he's exited, then it seems to be very tough and unfortunate for the driver of that 16 machine.
Never mind the 16, it was the top 2 that have connection issues. Both Reedy and M. Smith don't appear on the racetrack, so Justin Mons from running 3rd, entering pit road, has just been gifted the lead.
Well, that's a sight to behold. You're fighting 2 cars, all of a sudden they have issues, and just as quickly as you stay in 3rd going into pit road, you exit out in the race lead. So this is going to be wildly different. Very wild. I'm not sure we were expecting this much, Francisco, to see top 2 having issues as clearly as this. But for Reedy and for Smith, I guess their nights may be over very early here on lap 35, especially with the amount of yellows we've had. But nonetheless, we'll give an opportunity for everybody else in the top 5 to possibly scrunch in, including driver who was up at the front, Kyle Benson, got involved in that first incident on lap 1, went hard into the inside wall, burned up a fast pair, has a little bit of damage on the rear end, but still in contention. He is the current playoff leader and the driver who got his first win last week at the Charlotte Roval. When we had talked so much, Francisco, about how much of a relief it was for Benson, knowing that he captured so many top 3s, top 5s, and finally he was able to call himself a winner, and now he has kind of that monkey off of his back in 2021.
Yeah, without a doubt, we saw him lead every single lap at the Charlotte Roval, and he had such a lead that we saw him celebrating by leaving the car back and forth just before the backstretch chicane and before sliding across the finish line to burn it down immediately. So he was very excited about that race win, and you could tell in that interview that he was very happy about it, and he just feels so relieved that he can finally say he's won a race. And winning a race does so much for a driver. I mean, it's very tough when you go through a season and you're not winning. Especially if you have good performances, because you know you have that winning speed, and when you show it, you're just wondering, when is it going to end? When are you going to get that win? And when is it going to set off a potential run where you win multiple races in a certain amount of in a certain run? So maybe all it takes is one race. One race win is all it takes to set a driver off, and we've seen it happen with many drivers in NASCAR history. We've seen it happen with Jimmy Johnson in the playoffs occasionally. We saw it happen with Kyle Busch in 2015. It happened with Kevin Harvick in 2019 or 2020, excuse me, for most of the year. So if a driver gets hot and he's confident in himself, he's going to be very dangerous. And I think the last thing that people want is somebody who's been leading the points for almost the entirety of the year to get hot at this time of the season.
Especially with the way he's been performing in terms of points-paying finishes, even without that race win, and probably going to think how much it could change knowing how he does have a race win. There could be concerns, of course, with the way consistency shakes out over a season, but for Kyle Benson, he tries to continue to make that stick. He'll be the outside of row number 2 this time by Justin Mons and Cody Kinsey. The 41.93 will lead us to the green flag once more. Restart lap number 37. Pace car already down. We're back underway. And a quick start for Justin Mons as they head back to turn 1.
He was able to get away well, and a characteristic of the outside, both in the sim and in real life, is that it is traditionally not well at restarts. It's just very inducive to wheel spin, and you're just constantly sliding the entirety of the front straightaway, and you're just unable to get up to speed. So 3 wide for second momentarily there as they go into turn 3. I think they settled that one out, but now they're 3 wide for that third position. You can see all over the racetrack trying to navigate a way through, as we have one car on the apron backing out of that, and they're sliding towards the back end of the field off the pace, but no wreck happened there. And we see the 20 of Edward Scherner trying to make his way up through the field after an interesting crash that happened on, I believe, on the second caution of the race. So he's already worked his way up to third as we're 3 wide for fourth.
And already quickly for Edward Scherner, got into the wreck, got the fast repair, and he's back in contention for the race lead. Sits in a third. Meanwhile, almost a 3-wide battle for that 4th spot. That was Kinsey, MacArthur, and Kyle Benson, but they all seem to settle out. MacArthur will end up falling back almost to Benson for about the 6th position, and Kinsey will clear himself for 4th. Mons still at the head of this field. Scott Healy, though, moved into 2nd. He's ripping the wall at the exit of turn 2. A lot of them mostly separate as the field tries to keep themselves back up.
Already a couple laps after this restart, new tires, so you already see that these cars are going much faster. But even on new tires, when dirty air has less of an impact than it does later in the run, you still are trying to run elsewhere to try and generate a run, because even in 5 laps, you can lose almost a second, maybe 0.8 of a second from your fastest lap in just 5 to 10 laps of a run. So the tires are going to wear quickly, and you're going to see guys have to go all over the racetrack to try and find grip elsewhere, especially if it suits both their car and their driving style, because if you're able to make that top work, even if it's a little bit slower, you might be able to make up time. And since people won't be running up there, if they're better on the bottom, that's exactly where you're going to make up time and positions. And we've seen guys do that in the real-life Cup Series. Kyle Larson and Tyler Reddick are usually one of the first couple guys to jump up to the high side, and they're able to make ground. That's what allowed Kyle Larson to go from a 30th place starting position or so at Kansas to win stage 1.
And that's also something interesting to note, Francisco, because you sort of have a takeaway, or at least a sort of trade-off when you take either line, especially at a track like Atlanta, which can reward you for doing so much on the right and could really punish you if you do something wrong. And for the inside line, you are going to save tires more if you do utilize that white line, as it's been shown in iRacing for a while now. And of course, the bottom is also fairly fast. You can run all the way to the line, and you can still run very quick laps around this track. But then you also have sort of that trade-off. If you run all the way to the top side of the racetrack, you can get the run off of the corner. And for Scott Healy, it may have been the situation for him. He ducks his nose right to the inside of Justin Monzo, back out near the middle of the corner, so he ends up falling out short of the race lead, and Justin Mons, using that high side, will get the benefit of it. But like I said, you run all the way to the wall, you may be a little bit slower in turn, but you could get that run right off the corner and easily develop a large run back to turn 3. It's exactly what Scott Healy tried to do. Justin Monzo still defending for your race lead.
And it goes back to defending for position. You want to be the car on the outside when you defend for position because you get that run off the corner. You can pin the guy to the inside, but right there you saw them switch up the lines. Healy going to the top while race leader Justin Mons goes not all the way to the very bottom, but around that bottom seam. And that's a keynote thing about this build. You don't want to go all the way to the white line. You can drive down there, but the car can get very loose. Where the grip is probably about half a lane to a lane off that bottom. So you got to strategically work that bottom if you want to have both the grip and speed. You can't just go straight to the white line. Not with the Cup cars, at least, because in an Xfinity race I did here once, you can definitely go all the way to the white line with the Xfinity cars, especially if you want to save time.
Speaking of drivers using different lines, that's Cody Kinsey falling back from about the third running position or fourth running position. That's Tristan Bailey making work of him to the inside, so he'll take that pass away from the bottom and take it away for the top 6. Maybe a little bit of a stay back for the driver there of that number 93. As you see, just a little bit getting loose there by Tristan Bailey, and now a fight for third ensues as Scott Healy is now under pressure from the 20 of Edward Schur, already making his way back up. And Francisco, we had talked a little bit about Edward Schur and mostly around through last week's runabout at the Charlotte Roval. A lot of his prowess has been coming in very late in the season. We saw him join about the midway portion of the regular season, has made a couple of starts, but usually for the most part, that 20 has started to develop consistent runs after consistent runs, and surely enough, he has started to become probably one of the drivers we talk about a lot more throughout these races because he's really starting to put that charge. And like you said with Kyle Benson, when a driver gets hot, he could be dangerous, and for Edward Schur, that time maybe just now.
Yeah, he's running an old Tony Stewart paint scheme, and he's out there looking like Old Smoke running here around here. I mean, Tony Stewart, he was definitely good around here, and he got a couple of wins, and he's made some great memories at this racetrack. And right now, Edward Scherner's moved up to that second position, trying to see if he can catch up to Justin Mons, who's about half a second in front of him, but he still has a car right behind him to be concerned about, so he can't just freelance just yet, especially when you have this guy, Kyle Benson, in that fourth spot, who can easily get past some of these guys and start chasing on their leader with a blink of an eye.
Mention the cash prizes that are up for grabs here tonight at Atlanta Motor Speedway. The Dash for Cash coming to a finale. We had our qualifiers at Michigan not too long ago. Brandon T. Banks was the winner of that race. He is in this race, but Kyle Benson is currently your highest runner out of all of the 5 drivers. So that grid includes, of course, this 4 of Kyle Benson, the 86 of Tristan Bailey, the 75 of Nicholas Vazuti, and Tristan Bailey, the 4 drivers that have qualified from Michigan. So they are all running for money. So apart from running for a win, if they finish ahead of the other 3 competitors, they will get some cash prizes at the end of tonight's race. And you see here, maybe for Bailey, not the best situation as he's getting put under fire from the 13 of Craig Lonsarger, one of the winners here in 2021. So as for Benson, he's in a tight battle with 3 cars here for the second spot. I think he may have himself in a good situation, even if he doesn't win this race, as he tries to go to the outside of Schur.
I think he's just trying to back up that win with a solid run today. And we see Healy get very close to the wall in the center of the corner, but that's going to open up his exit. But Kyle Benson on the outside of Edward Scherner, he's going to have the favorable spot here if he can get clear of this 20. And even though if he runs behind the 64, because he's on the outside, and this goes back to what I was saying, you can defend against that bottom. You see right there, just center off. Nothing that the guy on the inside can do to combat that, especially when you can pin them. And as actually, we have a yellow out on the racetrack, our 5th of the day, and we'll try and get a look at what that was about and who it involved.
Right there was the cause of the caution right there. You'll take a look at the replay. A big crash coming to the entrance of turn 1. Handful of drivers in front of the 22 of Eric Schaffer got collected in this, and I believe it may have started with the 33 of Tyler Warner who got collected. Actually, this is later on. There was a wreck up ahead. That was the 6 of Port, then the 9 of Brandon Gillis, the 86 of Tristan Bailey. We were just talking about him at the front of this field, and now he gets put into big trouble here. Going on to the front straightaway, you'll take a look at it here, and I believe it may have started up, and that was Tristan Bailey getting loose up ahead the road, and a big hit for Brandon Gillis, and then even then, you see the 99 get collected, the 22 of Schaffer. And actually, this started way back to the entrance of turn 3, and we were looking at a side-by-side battle between Lonsarger and Bailey himself, but did not see the development happen here. Tags the wall, almost gets into Lonsarger, gets tagged again. almost about spun the car around. Seems as though he has it saved for the most part on the apron. And I think he may have lost it once more, coming out back to the front straightaway. You'll see it about here. Gets back onto the racing surface, and oh, just a clip of the grass sends the car around.
I got deja vu vibes from this wreck in the sense that in the 2017 Coke 600, Brad Keselowski and Chase Elliott had a crash that was exactly like this. I'm not sure if you remember seeing that, Kenneth, but in that exact same part of the quad oval at Charlotte, they had a similar impact and a similar spin. So different circumstances, but it was so eerily similar right here when they make contact, those two, and spin like this. Obviously, other cars got involved in this instance, but another crash. I believe that's the 5th or 6th caution that we've had in just the first 50 some odd laps of this race. They're going to be coming down pit road once again for some more tires because this racetrack is a cheese grater, and we may have to call Larry McReynolds to show the cheese grater.
Yeah, and as for that, Brendan Gillis, a hard hit, and I think you say it right there, Francisco, completely similar to that wreck between Brad Keselowski and Chase Elliott in that 2017 Coke 600 race where Keselowski was just so slow on the track, and then obviously with a mechanical issue, and then Chase Elliott just goes pounding right into him. And then you heard it there as you were taking a look right on that replay with Brandon Gillis. He didn't expect Tristan Bailey to be right up the track, and then as soon as he notices that the back bumper is meeting with his front bumper, stamps right on the brakes, but by that point the reaction is just too late and goes right into him. And as for Brandon Gillis, not sure whether he has a fast pair left. I believe he burned it up already in the first incident that he got collected in on the back straightaway. So again, very tough. We talked about it a little bit earlier, just in the way that you can burn your fastest pair up early for quick damage, but if you get into contact a little bit later, especially if it's race-ending contact, then your race pretty much will be over. You won't have to spend all that time on pit road trying to get that repaired, and for many, it could be a couple of minutes. For some, it could be a couple of seconds, maybe half a minute, but you may end up going 1 or 2, maybe more laps down on the racetrack. And speaking of which, we currently have about 21 cars on the lead lap. Last car on the lead lap is the 22 of Eric Schaffer, who I believe is making a trip down pit road. There he is without his front bumper. I'm curious to see whether he does have the fast pair left to give away in terms of his situation on the racetrack. We'll see exactly what happens when he goes down pit road, and actually going to just take time down there instead of getting that quick repair. So unfortunate for a lot of those drivers early on. To think, Francisco, we're only 53 laps in this race. There's still a very long way to the end, and with the amount of chaos we've had, you'd think this was probably a short track event.
Yeah, I mean, the one track that comes to mind on what this could have been is Iowa. I mean, there was one time you and I broadcasted a race at Iowa where a third stage was just caution after caution after caution after caution, and we were there, I think, for an hour and a half, 2 hours, just doing stage number 3, and it's not to that extent, but that's the last time I remember something quite like this. So that's definitely the first thing that comes to my mind when you mention that now. But before we go green, I've had a good opportunity to look at all these cars, and one that stands out to me is that is the one that Roman Long is running. It's a Jimmy Johnson scheme to that patriotic Lowe's scheme that he used to run. And I think it looks like a good scheme there with his 14 font, don't you think?
Well, I think so. I'm a Jimmy Johnson fan myself, so it probably helps a little more that looking at Roman Long's scheme and already noticing that patriotic Charlotte win. There's also a Jimmy Johnson scheme right behind him as well. Not a throwback, but indeed one of the custom ones by Lefty on the Iracing platform, a Pride Alley one that he released early back in 2020. So we have a couple of Jimmy Johnson paint schemes. See a Kyle Busch paint scheme right there, the one that he won Kansas with, so maybe it's happy to see him there, but we'll focus to the paint schemes up in front. Justin Mons and Scott Healy, 41-64, going to make their way back to the green flag on lap 55 of 167. Pace car makes its way down. Mons again with an early start, and we're back underway and up the gears.
Good start once again for Mons, and they're going to stay side by side for that second spot, and that's just how it's going to be for most of the evening. It looks like Edward Turner is going to get cleared for second. And if he's able to mount an earlier charge this time, he might pose a threat to that 41. You see right there with the draft, he's going to close up to the race leader. But will he make a move? Not to the inside, but he's going to try and go around the outside and try to fight a loose race car as he chases it up the track, potentially give himself an opportunity going into one. But the loose race car unable to help him. And you see side by side for second once again. So this is exactly what Mons needed to do.
And getting through the seams on the racetrack is definitely not easy at all. There goes Healy back to the bottom of the racetrack. There, meanwhile, is a battle for fourth on back. That was Steenbacher fending off both Kyle Benson and Craig Lonsar. Saw one car get loose to the bottom of the racetrack, but Steenbacher's going to make his way and settle for fourth as we continue on. Mon still with your race lead. And we were talking a little bit about paint schemes under caution. Like you said there just not too long ago, there is one paint scheme that certainly stands out in terms of the colors. We saw him in an incident earlier tonight, but still with a relatively clean race car. That is the number 8 of Tyler Murray with a paint scheme to his mom. One of the paint schemes that he made special here tonight, of course, it is Mother's Day weekend, so it is his mom's 50th birthday today. So happy birthday to Mrs. Murray. And of course, this weekend being Mother's Day, so I think a nice combination there, running a pink and black yellow scheme in honor and in commemoration, obviously with his Chevrolet Camaro. So good to see him running that scheme here tonight. Some of the many that we've seen out of Tyler Murray. I think for one, Francisco, we've seen so many out of Tyler Murray, so many out of a handful of other drivers. I can also think Craig Lonsarger to be one of them. A lot of drivers that we've seen pretty much play with colors for the most part on their cars and pretty much not scared to be at least expressful or using their expression to the most in terms of what they want to put out on the race cars for the most part.
Yeah, and first off, before I get into the paint schemes, happy Mother's Day from us at MaxSpeedTV to everybody out there on Mother's Day weekend coming up just this upcoming weekend. I hope everybody is able to have a special day, a special weekend with their parents and just have a good time. So with the paint schemes, Tyler Murray has had some great schemes. We've seen him usually roll one out, a new one every single week. So he it has not missed. He's definitely put up some great schemes. And having designed a couple schemes myself, I know what it's like to tinker with the with either GIMP or Photoshop, whichever one you may use to edit the schemes for yourself. But it is definitely fun, especially when you have an idea in mind that is come down to practical use. Now, this will be very biased, Kenneth, and I know that you'll agree with me anyway, but some of the colors I love working with are the Miami Vice colors of that. Yes. Pink, blue, white, and black colors. For me at least, they work so well together, especially given the right combination of lines or circles and gradients. Just if an idea comes into your mind, you most likely will not miss if you have those colors involved.
Well, I mean, it also depends on the passion you take with those paint schemes, of course. I know both of us, since we're both from the Miami area, we probably have a lot more in terms of our passion, our creativity with schemes like that, considering it's close to home and it's representative of the place we live in. And, of course, that also helps when translating it onto track. And, meanwhile, you're watching the battle for second develop. You saw a little bit of a checkup there from Ryan Steenbacher in 79. We saw him get into an incident also early in this race, but built up that fast repair, burned it out, and now he is back up to the top 3, trying to work on Edward Sure. Almost a bit of contact as they hit to turn 1. Almost another hit to the 20 machine into turn number 2. But in turn, Francisco, this is allowing the 41 to just look in his mirror and relax as he sails away with the race lead for now.
It's about as close as you want to get without actually hitting the guy, but that's not going to make him any happier. So a tough battle for the second position. Steenbacher is trying to get up there and have a solid run. It's been a couple races since we've seen Steenbacher have a solid run. It's not been a great couple races for him, so seeing him up front is nice for a change, and he's trying to do it for himself and maybe try to get clear for that second spot off of turn number 2. He may have to slide up, but the 20 will have a run, and will he try the crossover down the back straightaway? No, and he's going to settle for that position, so move Steenbacher's up into second as Healy tries to look around that 20.
That side-by-side battle for about 2 to 3 laps allowed Healy to put his name in the hat, so now he will look to the outside of Sure, going to try to make that move as Steenbacher's aims to run away. And you did say it there that we haven't seen too many fantastic runs out of Steenbacher's this season, a lot of it due to some bad luck. He's been involved in some incidents. His car has somewhat been mired in, let's say, strategy or a handful of other incidents that we've seen with that 79. And to know that he definitely does have fast race cars, he can definitely wheel a car. We saw him at Auto Club earlier this season in contention in a Summit Plowing Ford Mustang for the race win. Was running up front pretty much all race long. Did not get the win on strategy, but still was able to put up a solid top 3 run in the West Coast. And for Steenbacher, it hasn't necessarily been the best season for him, but runs like these certainly mean a lot more and can easily push him well into some championship sort of conversation, put him into the playoffs. And, of course, a win will put you in as well. He's run most of the season, so he does constitute as part of the rule book. That means you have to run about 60% of the races in order to qualify, of course, with a locked-in victory. There goes Scott Healy above Edward Schur for the 3rd position, and Lon Sarger also aiming to join this battle as well. So it seems as though, Francisco, Las Vegas, we saw a lot of battles, at least early on through the first couple laps, and then by around lap 10, lap 15, they seem to simmer down into long stretches, long separations. But I think for now, it's starting to bring the field back together here at some sorts.
Yeah, and again, this is a draft package, so as the speeds do simmer down, it does go a little bit into the driver's hands, and we'll see drivers that just are able to save their right front a little bit better, will find their way to the front. We haven't seen really too many people get on the loose side of race cars, but one thing that is a fact that is a little bit more apparent here at Atlanta is if you drive your car too hard, the right rear will wear extremely higher than almost any other racetrack, and that in itself makes the car looser, which in turn makes the car burn the right rear even more. So it's a self-worsening problem, and the same thing goes for the right front. If you push too hard on the right front, the car gets very, very tight, and it just compounds in on itself. So it doesn't get talked about too much, but if you drive too hard one way or the other, it doesn't matter what you do, it'll worsen the problem because it is just way beyond what you should have been doing in the first place. So saving tires has its own technique, and if done right, has good rewards. And we've seen that 41, who's restarted in the lead with the clean air, but he's done a solid enough job to maintain that lead. He hasn't really pulled away too significantly, and maybe that has been the key to the success.
And for one, Mon's probably one of the better ones on the long run. We saw him with a 2nd place finish at a probably also other tire-saving key track, and the Michigan International Speedway. Did not get the win, but certainly was able to put himself atop a lot of other drivers and fought even hand-to-hand with the driver of the 88 of Brandon T. Banks by switching around for the race lead a couple of times. It was a fantastic scene to watch from the Irish Hills, and now tonight, Justin Mon's trying to build up some consistent finishes here in this series, and for now, leading a bunch of laps definitely adds to the confidence level if you're the driver behind the wheel of that 41 Ford Mustang. Just knowing that you're kind of pulling away from the field, you're sort of getting into that rhythm, and you definitely have a lot of that speed to show for it. Although, you have to also keep in mind that Ryan Steenbacher's is slowly also creeping in, so you can't necessarily lag off in this long run, and probably maybe the longest run we've seen all night, Francisco.
It's not about how fast you go, but how you go fast instead. A little bit of a line I once heard there not too long ago, but it definitely applies to this situation because you can be fast. Anybody can be fast, really, but how you control that speed and how you're able to spread it out over the long run is exactly what it'll come down to. Saving the tires, working the traffic, working the lines. That's what it's about, and that's how you make your car better in the long run. But you know, you had me thinking since our conversation about the schemes, but this time out on a racetrack. And I know Homestead Miami Speedway has those blue walls, but I can't help but imagine if it had the blue and pink walls alternating like the Darlington walls where they alternate white and red.
That might be an interesting combo, but I think with the way, I think there might be a lot of purists, probably including myself, that if you add blue and pink, it may kind of throw some people off in a way, because right now we have sort of that gray stone green that is sort of a light colored tealish sort of green that maybe represents kind of, I guess, Homestead in Miami in just a little bit of ways. But maybe if they could add some, or maybe if you put it on the front stretch, they added it a light blue, white, and blue, but if you make it sort of a kind of black, light blue, and some hot pink, maybe that could make something, and maybe add some of that smoke on the front straightaway apron that we used to see before when it was yellow for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. I'd love to see that if that was the case. Having pink smoke from burnouts, I think that would probably be the best situation to see at a Homestead. And even here in Atlanta, not necessarily the texture updates from NASCAR just yet, because it is red, white, and blue now here at this track instead of just a plain white. But nonetheless, I mean, maybe talking about some wall coloring, it will be fairly interesting. But as interesting as that is, we are fighting for the lead up front. That is the 79 of Ryan Steenbacher. He is starting to creep his way in. They got around the 30 car Steven Brunner. That's a lapped machine, so they were able to get around him. But in that process, Steenbacher has made up a lot of ground, and he could be putting this pressure, or putting this fight right up to the back of the 41, maybe able to get by him in a handful of laps time.
He's been methodically closing in on your race leader. We saw him get past those other cars to get up into the second position. He was rather patient, so he definitely has not used up his tires and has saved enough for the last battle to be up before he gets to the race lead. So right now has been unable to get to the inside or the outside of Justin Mons and was aided with lap traffic. And you see there off the front nose of his car, there's another car there on the inside. They might catch him before they get to turn number 1, but it's just the one car. So I'm not sure if this will play too much of a factor here, but he hasn't let him exactly get away once again, but the lap traffic did help him in being able to close the gap as they're going to get by him here.
That's Christopher Bishop on the bottom. Going to try and stay out of the way for the most part. He's got significant damage, and we've seen him involved in a couple of incidents here tonight. So unfortunate way that the night has gone for the driver of that 42. The gap has separated, though. At least that lap traffic may have affected it a little more. And I think mostly when we go to short tracks, that's where it poses a larger risk for drivers who are in the lead or drivers who are in position. Just going around lap traffic where you can easily get close to them, and it doesn't take as long to even get to the back of lap traffic. Here at Atlanta, here at these intermediates, larger tracks, it's a lot harder to find that lap traffic around, but seemingly enough in the long run, you'll end up with them, especially on a pit stop strategy. And for that, we may end up having that within a couple laps or so. Drivers are around lap number 25 on their stint, so we may have about 15 to 20 laps more before we end up down pit road. A handful of drivers have already done so, so for the most part, everybody has been good on fuel, but you have to start thinking about that maybe just a little bit as we see a battle for third heating up as Lonsugger now comes to Scott Healy.
Yeah, we may see these guys come down pit road for tires before they do fuel, and that is a very common thing they do in real life. Tires are just worth so much, and I'm going to go over here really quick to the race leader, Justin Mons, and take a look at his lap times now in this last lap as he's coming to complete the end of lap 78. His lap this time was a 32:24, and if we go to the restart, on this last restart, he ran his fastest lap of the race, being a 30.28. So 2 seconds of fall off in these 25 laps, Kenneth.
Yeah, it's definitely tough on the tires, and even at Dover, you saw it really taking effect into these NASCAR Cup Series machines with the tires and the way that they can easily fall off and scrub off so much time, even in maybe 5 to 10 laps or so, because you run about 1 or 2 laps, you can still maintain consistently in that 30-second bracket, but then all of a sudden you go for 3, 4, 5, up to 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and you're already about 2 to 3 seconds off in the fall-off range from where you initially were on fresh rubber. So that's also going to be key to note. And you say there, a lot of drivers may take tires more than fuel. We're going to see both, but tires will definitely be key here because depending on where you pit, the tires will make a big difference in the sense that you can pit maybe a lap earlier. You can have them on the short run, and then all of a sudden, if somebody pits about 5 laps later than you, they'll be storming by quickly on the maximum grip possible. You see a battle there. That was a pass for third, maybe a pass for fourth as well. Scott Healy has not done so well up at the top of the racetrack. He's been kind of in the midst of this small hornet's nest of about 3 cars, and Craig Lonsugger got the best of him that time by. Craig Lonsugger, the winner at the Iowa Speedway, and a driver that took a short track win, and along with Scott Healy, mentioned that a little bit earlier, those two have been sort of the short track reigning drivers, but we've also seen strong wins out of Healy at other venues, and for Lonsugger, it hasn't necessarily been a finishing effort on most of the 1.5 milers. He seems to not be able to execute all the way up front near the end of the races, but he definitely has fast cars, and he can show a lot of promise, and right now, I think he's definitely doing that as he scrubs the wall a little bit.
Yeah, he's in that third position. As we actually see Healy, Edward Scherner have a little bit of a moment. Kyle Benson now moves into the top 5 with that mistake from him, as Scott Healy does regain control of that third position, but a crossover attempt by the 13 goes unworked, and he'll stay clear for that position. So a lot of battling, and you see a lot of tire wear out of these cars, but I will say this, the pit window, even though it is open to do a pit stop now, you'd have to stop again if you pit now before the end of the race. So what these guys may try to do, they may try to stretch it, Kenneth, honestly, to try and split the race into 2 55-lap runs, because I think it's within the realm of possibility for these drivers to do that if it stays green, because with the fuel window that we have for today's race, you can go those 55 laps necessary in order to split the race in half. You're asking a lot out of the tires, But I think most of these guys will try to go down that path so that I don't have to make an extra pit stop.
Well, if we go down that route as well, you have to start thinking about whether you can save enough fuel to get to that marker in the first place. You're probably looking at about 40 to 45 laps on the average stint, and most drivers will elect to go down pit road that time by around that pit road range. But then if you try to extend it a little bit more, you may have to clutch and coast. You may have to kind of run a little bit slower than you would normally if you're running 100% around this racetrack, as again, they go side by side for third. So if you're Justin Mons, are you starting to think about, or at least starting to think about extending this all the way to the end of the run, or would you want to be the driver who pits first? We've seen both scenarios. We've seen one where the leader stays out at Chicagoland, but we also saw where the leaders went down first at Las Vegas. So if you're going to make that strategy, where are you going to pick it? Because especially with the gaps that we have here, Francisco, they're not necessarily too largely strung out. So if you make some sort of a call, you may have to pay here for position if you do it wrong.
I would go with pit later. I know in real life that the key is to get to pit road first, but with the way the tires work here on iRacing, the later you pit actually works back into your favor. So I was in a race here at Atlanta, and the race winner had pitted about 5 laps later than the competition that he was racing for the win. And he had lost maybe about 8 or 10 seconds in total time from when the pit stop cycle started to when he came out of pit road. But he made that time up in the final 30 some odd laps of that race and was able to win by about a handful of seconds. So the tires wear here, and you would think the undercut is the way to go, but do not sell yourself short if you pit later, because it does offer you that chance to run them back down and make a pass of your own. And right now, Kyle Benson, who was struggling for a good portion of that run, is now caught up to these two to battle for that third position. Lonsanger has gotten past Healy, and Healy's trying to fight him, but he's going to have to look to out his left side window net and see that number 4 of Kyle Benson. These two obviously battled for the win at Dover in an exciting finish and are now on the racetrack battling for 4th.
Seems as though Kyle Benson has a lot of the long run speed, or also as a result that Healy and Lonsager were battling for so long to the point where they may have worn their tires a lot more than Benson did, also taking notes of that clean air. But Benson trying to still catch up to these two, and again, just as I mentioned, he currently still rides as your leader for the Dash for Cash. So if the race were to end right now, Kyle Benson would have the money in his pocket at the end of this race, but he's going to try and have to keep it there. The gap between himself and the other driver fighting for that Dash for Cash money prize is about 2 spots behind him, and that is the 88 of Brandon T. Banks, about 1 car, which is Edward Schur, as a buffer between them two. Nicholas Vazuti, also a Dash for Cash driver, so these two are also fighting for the position. They've been running in tandem for a while, and they also may have to look at gaining track position a little bit later on. But in a way, this kind of thrown a lot of drivers off, because especially at a place like Atlanta, even in, let's say, places like the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, you saw this race pretty much go almost all the way from flag to flag, and at Atlanta, usually expect a lot of green flag racing, and now it's starting to kick in after so many yellows. In a way, it could have disrupted that rhythm that a lot of drivers maybe developed over the course of the night, or what they expected when they dropped the green flag here.
I think that when they dropped the green flag, people were expecting this to be the race, and now they're starting to get it, and now we're seeing those drivers starting to come to the front as trouble in front. I think that may have been a lap car that had gone around between the 2 race leaders, so a close call there. I'm not exactly sure who that was.
We'll try to find exactly who it might have been, but it may have been one of the lap cars up at the front. And I believe possibly Steven Brunner here in his 30 machine. I believe he was right in front of the leaders when this happened, or at least maybe in sort of that situation. I'm not sure. It actually might have been Chuck Munier in the number, I believe the number 44 machine. We'll try to find exactly where he was on the racetrack. So here he was. Actually just tagged the wall. That was right in between the leaders, and luckily able to save the race car for the most part. Well, that could have been disastrous if there were any of the leaders. You see Chuck Munier now coming to a stop. He ends up out of the race to the garage. So unfortunate for him that he ends this race rather early. But in a way, I was talking about lap traffic. Any of those mistakes can easily send you into trouble, even if you're not close to the lap traffic, or even if you're just an innocent bystander running for position, or just running in general.
Yeah, lap traffic can strike at any point at any time, and we've seen that happen before. And I think the Ryan Steenbachers has come down pit road. I'm not entirely sure. Did he come down pit road that last time by to start the pit sequence? I think he did. Yeah, there he is down pit road. So they're already starting to come down pit road, and if they pit now, they can't make it the rest of the way. They're gonna have to pit again.
They may have to pit one more time. Couple drivers also down. That includes the number 4 of Kyle Benson. Also saw a little bit further back the 14 of Roman Long, 33 of Tyler Warner. Tyler Murray also here as well. So a good amount of drivers making their first stops here on lap number 94 under green flag conditions. It's the first time we see this all night long. And for Justin Mons, he's going to elect to continue to stay out further along. He may be employing that strategy you mentioned there, Francisco, to keep going all the way until the bitter end. And he probably will looking in a couple laps time to go down. But for most of these drivers here, you have to start thinking that for anybody in the midfield, do they start to react to what everybody does? As one car's around, that's the 8 of Tyler Murray that was coming out of pit road. Luckily able to keep it collected beneath the racing line, but that could have been a yellow flag, some damage to a Chevrolet Camaro, and at least maybe tarnishing his pit road strategy to begin with.
Yeah, and it doesn't get talked about enough that pit road exit is extremely tricky. He tried to stay on the lower end of it, but usually you want to be aggressive and get on that part of the pit exit that's banked just before the white line. And it gets very, very tricky off turn number 2, and he may have gotten over into that cross point. You see that seam right there on the apron. It's very hard to try and get on the throttle in the flat. Maybe he overstepped it too much right there. Yep, it just broke sideways on him, and he kisses the front end of the car into that inside wall. So fortunately for us, no caution, and he also backed it into the wall afterwards. So very nearly a caution there. And your race leaders are down pit road. Scott Healy and Justin Mons are into the pit road. Actually, Scott Healy stayed on another lap, but Justin Mons is under the 45-mile-per-hour pit road speed limit, and he's going to come in for some service. He pitted about 3-4 laps after the guy he was battling with, and he actually lost a little bit of time there. You see he was a little too far back, so that might cost him about a second or two.
Definitely could have. There's Travis Browder, Ricky Rosner, Craig Lauenslager to join the group of cars next to go down pit road. Scott Healy is the next one to stay out. You see him there lapping these cars and going to go around continuing with the race lead. Him and Edward Schur are the only 2 cars now that are on the lead lap. The only 2 cars so far that have gone down pit road. So now it's a big question as to whether Healy will go down this time or will he wait a little bit longer with Edward Schur to end up out of pit road with some fresh tires and some fuel. So here he'll be slowing down. There goes Steenbachers to unlap himself. Race leader Scott Healy goes down pit road this time.
So Scott Healy is down pit road, but let's get a view from the top of the racetrack to show just how much new tires mean. There you see Ryan Steenbachers having already completed his pit stop. And let's go over to where Justin Mons is, who's, I believe, just in 1 and 2 right now. There you see, that is well over a straightaway of a gap, and that happened in about 3 or 4 laps. That's what 3 or 4 laps newer tires did there, Kenneth, to be able to give Steenbachers this huge lead. But what I was talking about is going to happen over the next 30, 40 laps. We're going to see that 41 begin to close the gap ever so suddenly, but he will get there before the next set of pit stops and get around him and start to grow his lead once again. And that's the point of the strategy, just knowing when you can come down pit road and be able to make that gap up. And probably knowing they're going to have to pit again, he's using it to set himself up for the next green flag pit stop should we get there.
And just like we witnessed there, that small little mistake out of Justin Mons to be a little bit too back on the pit, at least the pit box itself, not forward enough to stand right there to get that service, had to drive the car a little bit more forward, a couple inches forward in order to get his actual service. So that cost him a couple of tenths there, maybe a couple of seconds if you will. And we see it mostly where drivers overshoot their stalls, where he undershot his stall. That loss of the time gave Steenbachers the race lead. Gap is, though, considerably closing as Mons does have the freshest tires out of everybody in the top 5, but easily he could probably gather it all up and lose all that grip trying to be in pursuit of the driver up in the front. So now we have about 67 laps to go here from the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Our first round of pit stops complete. We'll take a short, quick break, and we'll be right back with more coverage of the 15th race of the 2021 Ford Iracing Cup Series on MaxSpeedTV from the Atlanta Motor Speedway.
I am here and now, where stories you pass down are born. I am where drivers become legends, and legends become the new kings. I'm where nothing's impossible. Even a champion rising again in Phoenix. I'm moving forward, and if you really try.
Iracing is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all around the globe. Iracing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics and engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 170,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsports organizations like NASCAR to deliver virtual races based on the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, as well as many other series on the NASCAR ladder. iRacing also features team racing, providing a variety of options for members to create and manage their own teams. Race with friends or real-world teammates in full-length endurance events like the 24 Hours of Daytona, Spa 24, or the Bathurst 12 Hour. Additional partners include IMSA, World of Outlaws, Supercars, and IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own Indianapolis 500, Bathurst 1000, Chili Bowl, and many more iconic events. This is iRacing, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car. Sign up today at iracing.com.
.108 laps complete for the 15th race of the 2021 Ford Iracing Cup Series right here from the Atlanta Motor Speedway. You are taking a look at your current race leader after the first round of green flag pit stops. That is the 79 of Ryan Steenbarger, has been in control of this race ever since that first round of stops and got the head over Justin Mons, but Justin Mons easily closing in this gap. Of course, happy to have you back here on MaxSpeedTV. Kenneth Bueno, Francisco Bacallao along with you for the ride. And Francisco, we've been watching this somewhat comeback for Justin Mons on the fresh tires. He's been going a couple laps here, gaining some positions. We saw him under brake get by both Craig Lautenslager and Kyle Benson on the way, and now with just about 3 seconds in front of him will be the race leader, and slowly trying to carve in that with the fresh tires he's got right now.
And I was talking about that strategy, and I also was discussing with you under that break that this is a strategy that has been used to win some races in other series before, where you pit later than everybody, which is kind of counter to what you normally would expect of Atlanta. You'd think somebody who pits 5 laps earlier and gets that 10-second lead is set to win, but not the case here. You're able to stay out that much longer and use tires on this portion of the run to really close the gap. And another person we've seen that we've covered, or at least you have, that did a similar strategy to win a race was Omar Diallo at Homestead Miami Speedway in the Under Lawn Care Series.
Yeah, definitely he did. And of course, the strategy here, when you're trying to make this stick, we talked about the ways ones stay out, ones go in first. Steenbachers was one of the ones to go in first. Justin Mons was one of the last to go in. We saw a good amount of the field go under 1 lap down. And as for that, most of them have found their way back on the lead lap, with the leaders already making their stops. Here's a fight for the inside of the top 5. There's Scott Healy going around Nicholas Vazuti, and then some, giving a buffer between Vazuti and Kyle Benson, who again continues to run at the front of the field in terms of the dash for cash. Remember, we still have that going on for cash prizes, so we are still looking for the drivers who are at least fighting for the spots there. Lansager could have been one of those drivers, is not one of those drivers, and Benson getting him, at least almost getting around him, still right behind. But I guess we talked about it once more, Francisco, with the way the pit strategy has gone so far. And you said that with the way they're pitting at the time they did, we're gonna have to look for another round of green flag pit stops if we continue to remain under the situation. We could see yellow, everybody could go down, be good to the end of this race. But if you're in this situation right now, there may have to be some concern that, sure, you may have tried to execute this green flag strategy the first time around, but you may have to do it all over again.
Yeah, and the second time, for me at least, feels a little bit more comfortable because you've already done it once during the race. So you kind of use it as a practice, use it as a warm-up, and by the time you do it the second time, it'll be a little bit more routine than it was just breaking the ice and doing it for the first time in the event. So for some guys pitted, I believe, to start this green flag cycle about 25 laps ago. So if that's any indication as to how many laps we can go, I think in about 20 more laps, those guys that came down pit road initially are going to come down once again for a second round of green flag pit stops. So it's going to be an interesting turn of events here if we do stay green for the rest of this race. And, you know, a race that comes to mind when it comes to long green flag runs that you and I have covered before is Sunday Night NASCAR. They ran about a similar length of a race here, and they ran, I believe, 150 laps straight under the green flag and had several green flag pit stop sequences. So if this race is able to go green for the rest of the way, you can sort of see how the separation of the field, the tire conservations, and this strategy of just going later can definitely play a big impact. As we see a car there hit the wall going into turn number 3 sideways, but they save it. Is the 99 who almost lost it, but fortunately is able to keep it pointed in the right direction, and we stay under the green flag.
Oh, that could have also been another close call. We saw with Chuck Munier a little bit earlier in front of the leaders, and once again in the midst of the top 3, that is Eric Stewart, who almost went around, who smacked the outside wall coming into turn 3. And we almost have, once again, our 4th yellow flag of the night, but we maintain under green. And when you also have to note the fact that once you're seeing the gaps, once you're seeing the tire conservation, you're also noticing that the race is starting to fall into the palms of pit strategy itself. Obviously, yellows still can come out. Obviously, anything can change because you don't know how to predict any of the races. Nobody can really predict what's going to happen from here on out. However, once you start getting into this rhythm, once you start already acknowledging, okay, there's a lot of separation here, I'm already under a green flag run, I'm already deep in this strategy, it may end up falling as to how I'm going to execute, what strategy I end up deciding to do, and in turn how I'm going to end up as a result at the end of 167 laps. So that may be also a note once these drivers are in their rhythms already, as Steenbarkers is at the moment, and that could possibly change the entire complexion of this race. And we also mentioned fresh tires and how quickly it could go away. Well, Justin Mons has stalled at about 1.8, 1.7 seconds away from your current race leader. So he did make up a lot of ground, was about more than 7 seconds behind the race leader at one point. But it's since carved in for a good amount. And now with the tires starting to equalize, he is pretty much not able to gain as much ground anymore.
That may have been pushing. He might have pushed a little bit too hard at the start of the run. and now it's sort of hurting him just a little bit, or maybe he's just not gaining as much time as he had hoped, and at this point is trying to maintain, sort of run these laps out and let the car catch the leader for the next couple laps, knowing that there's still 48 laps to go in this race and another green flag pit stop that these guys have to do. So it'll give him another opportunity to hopefully come down pit road and not make a mistake, because let's also remember that he did have a mistake where he undershot the pit box and had to go in. We don't know exactly how much time he lost, but our rough estimate is basically the gap between the leader and himself right now. So he hasn't been gaining too much time in the last couple of laps and sort of stalled out, but he is still within striking distance. So I would not count out the dominant car of the day.
You definitely can. The gap has grown, though, to 2.1 seconds between the 41 and the 79. We looked at sort of a closing rate between third on back. There's Craig Lonsarger, Kyle Benson not too far behind at about half a second, and then Scott Healy, who runs half a second behind Benson. And then you find Brandon Banks and Nicholas Vazuti, who are running well within each other's grasp. So we do have some sort of share of cars within each other's range. Again, two of them running for the Dash for Cash, and pretty much everybody else in the top 15 all spread around. There was Tyler Murray, who went around and almost brought out a yellow. He lost his rear bumper, but currently rides in the 12th position. There's Pete Bruni. Got around some of the handful of incidents tonight. A little bit of damage to the front end. He rides in the 13th running position. A lot of these drivers, mostly inside the top 12 and out, are at least one lap or more down. So we currently have 11 cars running on the racetrack. Last one being the 25 of CJ Munier.
You know, and another topic of conversation, Kenneth, and I know we talked about this relatively towards the beginning of the broadcast, but I'll bring it up again. You know, it's still 2021, but as previously mentioned, iRacing did release the next-gen cars that NASCAR Cup Series will be using in 2022, and you know, it's interesting just the changes that those cars will bring towards the series, the different way of driving, the different mechanics, the different specs that they have. They also released the specs, which was very interesting, so you're able to get an in-depth analysis as to what is the science behind these brand new race cars. So it's going to be interesting, I think, once we start getting closer to the end of the year, and even beforehand, we may see different leagues maybe already start to use those cars, and we'll have to learn how people race those cars. It's basically going to be a start from scratch, essentially. Excuse me there. It's going to be a start from scratch, having to learn what these cars do, see how people race them, and sort of build expectation. We sort of already have expectations and stuff that we know about this car, the Xfinity car, the truck, but we're going to have to learn right from the beginning with it being a brand new race car.
And that's also the benefit, I think, that what iRacing has done with eNASCAR and NASCAR themselves and the Pro Invitational Series. A lot of people, including myself, were probably concerned and curious as to when those next-gen cars are going to be released, because, of course, they had been revealed, the manufacturer-specific cars. They had been released today at 3 p.m. Eastern. We got a first look at what the Camaro, the Mustang, and the Camry were going to look like. A lot of the drastic changes in bodies and, of course, the specs in the cars. And then all of a sudden, you realize from the news about 2 days ago, right before the launch of the next-gen cars, that they were going to use the next-gen cars in iRacing, which pretty much signifies that iRacing already had the inside scoop on these cars of 2022, already had them set in the sim, already had them in terms of sounds, handling, interior and exterior textures, everything beyond the sun of those cars. They were already made, they were already done, and they were already manufacturer specific. So you can already have the Camaro, Mustang, and Camry already out. And then all of a sudden, in the midst of the Pro Invitational broadcast, so you and I were just prepping before the race, all of a sudden, an announcement comes out, hey, these cars are out in the store, you can go buy them for $11.95, and you can go whip them around the track for a long time until they actually go out on the real racetrack in a real NASCAR points paying event. So it truly comes to a testament of how sim racing has gone so far with the relationship with other racing organizations, including that tight relationship between iRacing and NASCAR, to not only do the updates for tracks and cars in the current era of NASCAR, but to also bring in the next era and the future of NASCAR so relatively early before the next season starts.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be interesting because they just released today, and you said they made an announcement. They made an announcement later. When we found out, there had been nothing. You were just happened to be going through the iRacing store, and boom, there it was. Nothing mentioned, just the three cars of the three manufacturers. And that caught us off guard, and immediately purchased them because we knew it's going to be a necessity for us not only to drive but also cover these races. So just having those cars around before they're actually going to be races is definitely going to be crucial to building a notebook for us to have an understanding as to what they're going to do, what can we anticipate the racing to be like and such. So it's going to be fun. I personally can't wait to drive a couple more laps at different racetracks to start building that notebook, because I know it's going to end up coming back in a couple leagues in a couple months. Really, I don't think that anybody's going to wait to start using this in leagues until 2022. I think we may be seeing this happen as we head into the summer. I think we maybe seeing some leagues perhaps try to use them into the summer when we begin the summer season. And and if you think about the other series we cover that will have another race at Atlanta, as we have a caution to end this green flag run, and that'll interrupt my comment there. I'll finish it under this caution, but Steven Brunner in the 30 goes around.
It was a lap car, the 30 of Steven Brunner, sporting that Ally Pride Jimmy Johnson paint scheme. Seemed as though he was very slow off the exit at turn 2. We'll try to find a way as to where this might have happened, where this began. And this was within some lead lap cars. This is Roman Long and Tyler Murray around him. As they're coming into turn 1, there might have been some contact here. And actually right there with Tyler Murray goes hard into the outside wall. They both get stalled. And then the 30 trying to hold on the brakes goes almost to a complete stop in the middle of the racetrack. That's what brings out the yellow flag here. Or at least our 4th yellow flag of this evening. You'll take another look at it. This is a 3-car train. 30 goes to the inside, tries to soar back up to the entrance of turn 1, then gets tagged along with the 8. Fortunately for Tyler Murray, it has not been the night he's wished for. A little bit more damage picked up from there, and Steven Brunner with the short end of the stick brings out our 4th yellow flag of the evening. So Francisco, I know we were talking about what the future holds, but we have to focus on the present, because now leaders are on pit road with a chance to make it all the way to the end.
That was actually our 6th caution of the race. We had 5 quickies early, but now this could be potentially the final pit stop. We've seen green flag runs take over the final stretch of the race, and who wins this race off pit road? I stuttered so badly, but he did spin the tires exiting his pit box. I wonder who got it, and it may have been Steenbacher's by a nose. Let's see if we can get a look of that pit exit once again. It was very tight between those two, Kenneth. I mean, you heard it. I could not pronounce a word there, trying to figure out what had happened there. You see right there, he just barely spun the tires, and that was right all there. It took to lose the lead.
Yes, right there. You'll see it as they're exiting pit road. There's a yellow line just outside of pit road. You'll see it here. They're both side by side. That yellow line right there with the green cone. That's all she wrote. That's how short the gap was between those two to go for the race lead out of pit road. So Steenbachers will have the upper hand, but the good thing for Mons now is that he has an opportunity to attack. That last time, throughout that entire stint, he ended up spending most of his time on the track trying to catch up to the race leader, to gain his positions, to get back to the race lead, and use all of his tires beforehand. So now, with an equal playing field, with everybody on fresh tires and enough fuel to make it to the end, now the 41 of Mons can start worrying about being here at the front and tackling that 79 of Ryan Steenbachers to go back to the race lead, where he has already led a good amount of laps. 62, in fact, for the 41 of Justin Mons. We saw him lead a good chunk of laps at Michigan not too long ago, and he continues to build up upon that lap counter there on his stat sheet here for the 4-Wide Racing Cup Series, trying to execute that with a checkered flag in hand. It will be his first of 2021. And as for this first row, Francisco, none of these two have won a race this season. Steenbacher has yet to get a checkered flag. Neither has the 41. And then you go to row number 2 with a pair of cars that already do have a win. Scott Healy with one at Dover, and Kyle Benson with one last week at the Charlotte Roval.
Interesting quadrat we have up here in the front. Those in the second row battled each other for the win at Dover. Scott Healy coming out victorious, and that did get followed by Kyle Benson dominating at the Roval a week ago. And then the top two neither have won this season, but that could change here today. But before we take the 1 to green, I do want to finish what I was talking about just before that caution came out. A league that you do cover on your channel, Kenneth, the CRL Cup Series, their new season will start around the June time, and I'll be interested to see if they do choose to go with the 2022 Cup cars. That's going to, because it came out at an interesting time, and they do have enough time for people to purchase them before So you can have mass amounts of people actually being able to own them to be able to run a league sufficiently with them. So interesting timing, and honestly, I could see it being a real possibility, but it'll come down to the admins of that league in particular if they choose to. But I think we may be seeing a several of them over the summer begin to translate to those new cars as to especially build a note before official heads there next year.
And we definitely could, but as we look to the front of the field with about 33 laps left to go, gonna catch actually exactly 33 laps left to go. Here's what your top 10 looks like. Ryan Steenbacher's got the benefit of the entire situation of green flag pit stops. He will lead us back to the green flag, followed by Justin Mons. Scott Healy and Kyle Benson make up your second row. Nicholas Vazuti and Craig Launsauger back to 6th place. Brandon T. Banks, Travis Browder, your row number 4 to 8th. And Siju Munier and Roman Long cap off your top 10 on this restart. Lap 135, a 167. Will this be the run to the end of the race? We'll just have to find out. Green flag back in the air from Atlanta. Big jump from the 79 to Steenbacher's almost a block to the bottom. Healy makes his way down low as they all head back to turn 1.
Healy able to get to the inside of Justin Mons. Mons is going to try to hang on to that third spot. Healy with a big enough run. Is he going to try and get to the inside, potentially side draft that number 79, go for the race? And here comes Justin Mons trying to go to the apron to make it 3 wide. And he is there. His nose is on the inside. And Healy squirts ahead, and he's going to take the lead, but he is sideways in front of the field, and he's going to go around. He's not, but there goes Mons. Mons spins and actually gets airtime into the grass. It's all going off on this restart as we stay green.
And he goes down pit road. What a heartbreaking almost end to this race for Justin Mons. He's going to have to go down as pit road speed limit may go 1 or more laps down. Healy ends up falling back to the clutches of about the top 10 to the top 15. And as for the front of the field, Ryan Steenbacher stays ahead. And look who's found his way to second. Kyle Benson now moves to the second position.
Hanging around that top 5, but he's coming to the front when it matters, battling for the win with just 31 laps to go. Kyle Benson moves into that second spot, battling Ryan Steenbacher, who's come on late in this race. And look who's in third, Nicholas Vazuti. He is battling for that dash for cash with Kyle Benson, I believe, and there they are just behind the race leader. So it's getting really tasty up front.
30 laps to go. Next time by Nicholas Vazuti now makes up the top 3 as Benson tries to charge ahead of the fellow Mustang up front. 3 prancing horses in the top 3. But take a look to the top 5. Look at Travis Browder and Craig Launsauger. These two have been running completely opposite races. Browder near the midst of the top 15 all race long, and Craig Launsauger aiming for at least a roller coaster evening up and down all over here at Atlanta, making up the top 5. Meanwhile, everybody according up back to the front. And you got to wonder how Benson will try to attack for this race lead. Will he use a different line? Will he use tire conservation? We'll just have to find out. Less than 30 laps to go as Steenbacher crosses the line.
How about Travis Browder up in that 4th spot? He's been running somewhere between 10th and 15th for most of the event, cracked the top 10 in that green flag run, but now is in the 4th position, and we've seen this out of him before, Kenneth. We saw it at Pocono, and we saw it at Dover, where he's just able to finish better than where he runs. And for a race car driver, that is very important because you're able to get more out of the day in which you showed. And ultimately, at the end of the race, that's when the points are rewarded. And if you're able to get the points, that's all that it matters, and that's all you need in order to get yourself into either the playoffs or a championship spot. But right now, this top 2 has not really been able to get any closer, but not get any farther either. And Vazuti just sitting there stalking these two. And as tires continue to wear, as we get further into this run, it's going to get harder to run this close and into the same line. So right now, it's fine. But in about 5 or 10 laps, I'd check in again, and I guarantee will not be exactly the same.
And there's still about 28, 27 laps to go in this race. So if you're probably predicting this one to stay green, you have to enable that tire conservation mode because you can't go all out already in the first 5 laps or else you'll be falling back through the field. And for Kyle Benson, use that aggressivity up front, but has yet to get by or even to make a move on that race leader of the 79 just yet. So you gotta maybe wonder if he's using that, or at least the situation right now, to save a little bit and wait until later to make that pouncing move. These drivers do not have to make a pit road stop from here on out. They can make it to the end of this race, so there are no worries about whether you have enough fuel to make it to the end, whether you have to make one more pit stop. It's all about nailing these pit stops near the end and ensuring, or at least nailing the tire conservation to the end and making sure you can be there to the front to get a race win. As for Scott Healy, that almost went around on the front straightaway, he's fallen back to 9th, trying to pounce on Brandon T. Banks. Over him and Justin Mons, it sent their race from a possible race victory to one that could be in a deep hole.
And that's what you have to do to try to win these races. All it does is show that they were giving it all, and you cannot fault anybody for giving it their all at this point in the race, going for the win. Who knows? Maybe it's the final restart, and you do have to save your tires. That may have been the last pit stop, but it also may have not been. Maybe we get a late race yellow, and it's not exactly strange to see those fly around here. Knock on wood, us commentators curse. But it may happen, and if it does, you have to execute on pit road. And just think about it, Kenneth. Something that has probably flown under the radar for us to this point. What if Justin Mons had barely eked out into the race lead on that off of pit road and given himself the lead for the restart? Who knows what position we could have been in right now.
That definitely could have been very big, and especially if the yellow comes out from here on to the end of this race, there probably definitely will be pit stops down the line, and for the execution line on the pit road sequence, that's going to be very large indeed. Gap has separated just a bit by about half a second between your top two leaders, but then it's also separated back to 3rd and 4th, and Travis Browder has slowly crept in to 3rd place Nicholas Vazuti. So although we have the top 4 spreading away for the rest of the field, the battles in between these positions is definitely not over yet. Right on board here with the 18 heading into turn 3. See him trying to block over that dirty air, get some cleaner ones as he heads to the inside and get a little bit more ground on the Ford Mustang up front.
Travis Browder in the M&M's Mix Toyota Camry, which Kyle Busch ran at Kansas. I'm going to have to buy me a pack of those. It's different variants of M&M's in a single pack. Well, that's going to be interesting, but he is battling Vazuti in that 3rd spot, but Vazuti knows that the guy he wants to be battling is in front of him in that 2nd position, which is the dash for cash, and as laps wind down, he's going to lose less and less opportunity in order to get ahead of him. So right now, if this stays the way it is, he's going to start hoping for a caution in order to give him another shot at getting past this 4 car and winning that dash for cash, because he's got other problems right now.
And definitely the problem lays in his rearview mirror now. Almost 20 laps to go here from the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Steenbacher still leading this field. Kyle Benson now falling back on the older tires, and the long run may spell this race all the way to its very end. Top 4 rather, have broken away from everybody else. Here's the 5th place car. No battles really for position among here. Here's the one, at least for that 6th spot, Roman Long, who's caught up to the top 10, and Brandon T. Bankson. What a pickup here from Roman Long. We've seen some of the bad luck strike him within this season so many times, and now running this scheme here, running this race at Atlanta, was able to dodge all of the trouble on the back straightaway, or at least most of it, and is now in prime position to hold on to top 10 at the end.
I believe it's the fact that he's running a Jimmy Johnson scheme, who was very successful in the mile and a halves and at Atlanta specifically. So maybe a little bit of Jimmy's luck is rubbing off on him right now, don't you think?
It definitely could have, but at least for the moment, Roman Long has done a fantastic job wheeling his race car to the end, and now coming to about 19 laps to go at the start-finish line. Roman Long definitely has a solid shot of maintaining himself in the top 10. Does have a little bit to watch out for Brandon Banks, trying to give him some pressure, but nonetheless could walk away with a destined points day and trying to catch up to the playoff standings and put himself into the top 10. Meanwhile, Steenbacher comes out of turn 4. He'll catch 18 laps to go from the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Laps are ticking down, but the possible concern of a yellow flag coming out soon could be very viable for the driver behind that 79, just trying to log in these laps and finish this race.
Yeah, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier in the run, that as the run progresses, they were not going to be able to stay that close to one another without it impacting both the gap and the tires, and we're seeing just that. Ryan Steenbacher, who was running second for the first part of that long green flag run, eventually took the lead after short pitting and taking advantage of a mistake from Mons on pit road. And those two together is what allowed him to get a big lead and have enough to hold off any battling with that 41. but he does have Kyle Benson close enough behind him to where any mistake could open the door for that driver of the 4, and we've seen the 4 before just come alive, and a little bit of a close call for that 88 a little bit further back trying to get to the inside of Roman Long. No caution there as nobody really went around. So with coming to 16 laps to go, Kenneth, I think everybody but the race leaders wanting a caution.
And especially in the fact that they could all go down pit road and start things all over again. We've seen green-white checkered restarts happen at 1.5 miles before. I believe the last time we had them was at the Texas Motor Speedway earlier, where James Holzer captured his first win of the season in 2021 in that kind of fashion. Dominated that entire race, then lost the race lead in some of the later parts with less than 15 laps to go. Then yellows start to come out. Yellows continue to come out, goes all the way to green-white checkered territory, and then he holds on, takes back the race lead, and wins the event at the end of that race in the Lone Star State. And for that 79, he wants to see this race go green all the way to the very end. We talked about his performances over the course of this season and is still looking for his first checkered flag of 2021. Remember, the drivers in the top 3 already have 1 or more wins. Kyle Benson with 1 last week at the Charlotte Roval, and Nicholas Vazuti with a pair of wins for his own credit in this season so far. So for Steenbachers, the pressure may be building, though 14 laps to go left here from Atlanta. How long can it take before he can execute this win?
Well, 14 laps. That's how long he's got if it stays green.
Of course, he definitely has to wait that long. And for being in this race lead, behind the cockpit, maintaining the speed, maintaining the consistency, maintaining the rhythm, and counting down each and every lap, just hoping it goes faster by the second. And it feels a lot slower, usually behind the wheel, than we usually see up here in the booth, Francisco. And I know you've experienced that a lot, at least being in the field, running for position, especially in the catbird seat, in the final segments of the race. Just hoping that it stays green, hoping that nothing happens, and hoping that you stay up front.
Yeah, I was recently in a position like this past weekend at the Michigan International Speedway. Unfortunately, the race did not go green to the end. So if that's anything to go by for your race leader, Ryan Steenbachers, then he's going to have to swallow it up and get ready for a potential late race restart. And it happened exactly at this point in the race, 12 laps to go. It was a good race for me there, but unfortunately I did not come away with the win. Hopefully a different result is in the books for Ryan Steenbachers. But look at this, Vazuti sideways off turn number 2, still battling with Travis Browder for that 3rd spot. These two battling for a spot on the podium. Right now, that top 2, though, the gap is still, I believe, about half a second, actually down to 0.3 of a second. So Kyle Benson slowly keeping himself there, trying to see if he can close the gap enough to try and force a mistake out of your race leader, or at least get him in the mirror, looking up, trying to change his line, anything to gain a 10th here or a 100th there, and that'll slowly reel him in. You see him loose off the corner, but I don't think that's going to hurt him too much given the fact that he was most likely full throttle through that whole thing.
And of course, most of the tires have gone away, most of the grip has already dissipated, so you're already having to let go of the throttle a lot more than you would. And you were looking at the 3rd place contentious fight between Vazuti and Travis Browder. Browder, though, although he's run relatively quicker laps than Vazuti a handful of times around, although he had some of the better runs through corners, he has still yet to get by the 75 machine, so we may end up seeing them stall out in the final 10 laps of this race. Gap has opened up just a bit and also closes throughout the corners. He went up to 0.6, now back to 0.4 of a second. So Kyle Benson is still within the crosshairs to catch up to Steenbachers, and this gap may maintain stable all the way to the end. And gotta rush in that heart rate for the 79. And Steenbachers, he'll catch 9 laps to go from Atlanta this time by.
And speaking of end of the races and race wins, just want to break it to our viewers that Eric Jones did win the Pro Invitational race from the Darlington Raceway in that famed 43 car. So that just wanted to bring that up just before the end of this race for those who may not have been aware of it.
Yes, sir. Made it one of the last lap passes 3 wide between, I believe it was Anthony Alfredo and another driver I can't quite remember the name of, that was on the outside, on the very outside of the outside wall. And Eric Jones went all the way to the bottom into turn 1, made a gutsy move 3 wide, ended up winning that race. So at least a big congratulations for the first technically next-gen winner of NASCAR. Eric Jones, at least it was virtually on the Iracing series. Eric Jones in the 43 car Camaro taking the first win of the Next Gen Series in the Iracing world. And as for the Ford Mustang up front, it's going to be 7 laps to go. Telemetry says about 3 minutes 50 seconds before this race is concluded. Will we see a yellow? The eyes are peeled all across this 1.5 mile racetrack to see whether we end up having that yellow flag. But for Steenbacher, still holding that solid gap over Kyle Benson and still looking for his first win of the season. As Vazuti got a little bit loose out of turn 2, but he's well into third. Everybody separated on this long run, and perhaps we probably expected this, knowing that maybe no yellows would have been coming out as the field kind of strings out in a tire conservation mode.
Yeah, the latter part of this race has been relatively filled with green flags and green flag runs, and given the fact that almost half the field has been wrecked out, that there are less cars on the racetrack to potentially produce a caution, so it does lean that way. And as you see now, we actually have a cloud cover on the racetrack. No sunshine on this racetrack, even though the sun has been going down, and that could be playing a factor. There is most definitely a cloud cover on this racetrack, which will cool the temperatures just enough, and that may be a one last wrench that can play in either direction for this top 2.
Collecting 5 laps to go from the virtual Atlanta Motor Speedway. Ryan Steenbacher's, you're riding on board, just the precision on the wheel there to keep it smooth, to keep it steady, and hold his rhythm above Kyle Benson, who still sits well into his rearview mirror and still looking for that first win. Almost got it at Auto Club, but strategy kept him out of it. And now strategy has put him in a position to be on the benefit side and take his first win of the season. 4 laps to go, and everybody in the top 2 has separated away from third on back. It's more than a second and a half to Nicholas Vazuti. Kyle Benson not only looking for a win, but for a run for cash prizes as well. He's cut it down to 0.2 of a second with almost about 3 laps to go when we go next time by.
We may be seeing one of these great Atlanta finishes coming up, Kenneth. We've seen it so many times, and Kyle Benson may have saved his best for last. He's not going to go down without a fight. We see a battle back for the end of the top 5, but the focus is on your leaders with 3 laps to go. Just about a quarter of a second is separating them. Kyle Benson really starting to dig.
And Steenbacher's did not have the best exit out of turn 2. That's what allowed Kyle Benson to get the run off. You see him here already catching up. You see him almost in that draft, but he needs a little more time, or at least he needs a miracle here to gain all this ground back if he wants to be at least fighting with Steenbacher's for the race lead as he comes across the stripe. 2 laps to go from Atlanta. The sun's back out, and the 79 still in control.
Running the top in 3 and 4 did not do him any justice, but it is helping him on this end of the speedway. If he's able to run the correct lines and a possible mistake from the 79, he'll be right there, but he needs to do it now because he's starting to run out of time. With just 2 laps to go, there is about 4 miles, or no, excuse me, it's about 2 miles left in this race, so go time is now.
Coming out of turn 4, the 79 Orion Steenbachers will take the white flag. 4 more executely perfected corners, at least perfectly executed corners here at Atlanta to get his first win of 2021. Benson still trying to be on the charge, but not able to get it yet. A little loose out of turn 2. Gap closes to about 0.2 of a second. This will be the final time to the final set of corners. Will Kyle Benson have enough time? The answer seems to be no. And off of turn 4, the 79 Orion Steenbachers captures his first race win of 2021 from the Peach State.
Great job. That was a lot of pressure in those closing laps, knowing that Kyle Benson was catching up. Just ran out of time. And his first win of the season, I believe, for Ryan Steenbacher. There you see, congratulations from Kyle Benson, who does finish second place, but he won't feel as bad about it, knowing that he did get that race win a week ago. So all smiles from your top 3 here tonight.
Kyle Benson, your winner of the Dash for Cash finale. He gets it over Nicholas Vazuti at a hard-fought race all the way to the end. Kyle Benson, not with a checkered flag, but with some money in his pocket to conclude this one. And Ryan Steenbachers will still come across the line. Not going to do a celebration just yet. Going to go one more time around. And after a season that's been up and down for him, many different places where he had opportunities to get good finishes, to get wins. And tonight he finally gets the weight off of his shoulders. And 2 weeks in a row, Francisco, we see 2 first-time winners in Kyle Benson finally getting a win. And for the 79 being here ever since the first race at Daytona, also finally getting his first win of the season.
Yeah, it's been a couple first-time winners the last couple of weeks, and been fun to watch. And he's going to celebrate now on the front straightaway in front of the virtual fans at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. And he's going to soak it all in, enjoying his time, a race winner.
He'll burn it down in front of the virtual fans. Right over the sun, you see Tyler Murray giving a watch of the celebration. First win of 2021 for Ryan Steenbachers. And with that, and with his win, we'll take a look at your full-fledged field results, see exactly where every driver finished at the end of 167 laps. Ryan Steenbachers, of course, your winner by just 1/10 of a second to the Dash for Cash winner. The 4 of Kyle Benson continues his strong suit run throughout this season, maintains control of the points lead. Nicholas Vazuti ends up in the top 3, just short of that Dash for Cash qualifier, but got into an incident earlier tonight, so this is a massive pickup for him. Travis Browder ends up 4th with Roman Long in a Jimmy Johnson paint scheme, ending up in your top 5. Scott Healy almost dominated a little bit earlier, led about 62 laps, ends up 6th on the finishing running order. Edward Schur in the 20 machine comes back from a large incident to open this race back to the 7th position. CJ Munier will be 8th, followed by Justin Mons. Slight mistake, almost a crash near the end of the race, and one of the more dominant cars as well into 9th. And Craig Lautensager caps off your top 10 here tonight.
And 11th, Brandon T. Banks is a lap down, finishing in 11th with Pete Bruni behind him. Tyler B. Murray, we saw get in an incident there, will finish in the 13th. Ricky Rosner in 14th, Robert Parrott in 15th. Eric Stewart, we saw involved in an incident, will finish 16th. Christopher Bishop, who almost went flying on lap 1, will finish 17th. Stephen Bruner will finish in the 18th position. Tyler Warner will finish in 19th. Chuck Munier will be in the top 20.
And behind them, you'll find the 93 of Cody Kinsey ends up in the top 21. Ken MacArthur will be behind him, followed by Eric Schaffer in the 22. Early incident sends him out, as well as Michael Woolley. Tristan Bailey running for that Dash for Cash. He also ends up near the end of this field. And Brandon Gillis also as well. Big incident for both of those drivers to end this one. Brian M. Smith started up front, but then called it quits near the middle part of this race, getting into a couple incidents himself. He ends up 27th. Jogi Sagwiped, an early promising good run, ends him 134 laps down in the 28th running position. Jake Royal in 29th, and Austin Reedy capping off your top 30 from Atlanta.
And rounding out the field, Cole Martin, your pole sitter, finishes in 31st. Derek Knoll in 32nd. TJ Burst in 33rd. And Joe Sanchez will round out your field in 34th.
So that concludes all the 34 drivers that end in this field here from Atlanta. And we will take a moment to talk with the driver who finally gets his first race win of 2021, the 79 of Ryan Steenbachers, with a win here at Atlanta. We'll bring him in from victory lane. And Ryan, there have been countless times where it felt like you were close to victory. You had the car for victory. Tonight, you dominate in the latter portion of this race. You take advantage of fuel strategy, and you hold on in the final segment to take your first win of the season. Just give us your thoughts, your emotions, how you feel, and how you executed this win here tonight.
It feels good. It feels really, really, really good. It's a long time coming for me, and I've been in a lull for a long time without any wins. So this one here feels amazing. It feels really good.
And it definitely was no fluke. You had a lot of speed near the end of that race, and it took that pitch strategy was a pivotal moment, not only for you, but for pretty much the rest of this field after what was an early spur of yellow flags, quick cautions, big wrecks. And for you, you got mired all the way back to 23rd, but then you end up crawling yourself back in, and then you end up in a pitch strategy with a chance to take the race lead. Walk us through that sort of mindset, what plan you guys tried to execute, and inevitably also how that positively ended for you in the long run.
Well, once I started moving through traffic, I realized I didn't really have the car dialed in, and I really didn't have the track dialed in. And I was trying different things, watching other people, seeing what worked. Then it just kind of clicked. I kind of got with a fast group of guys, the top 10, seeing what they were doing. And from then on, I just put my own little twist on it. Fuel strategy was huge. I knew the undercut was going to work. I knew running the tank dry, just there was no advantages. We had another pit stop around lap 130, and just by chance, when I wanted to pit, it went yellow. So I actually came down to pit road, and I dodged it last second as I seen the yellow come out. One of my teammates was able to call the accident. So that for me was huge, because if I would have pitted, that would have been back of the pack, and yeah, I wouldn't be here right now.
Well, you finally have the weight off your shoulders. Your first win of the season finally comes here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. And you guys are going to Bristol next week. No, that's going to be a lot of fun in itself. But before we let you go here to celebrate from Atlanta, is there anybody you just like to thank? Any teams, sponsors, or anybody else that makes it happen for you in the sim and in this league specifically?
Just my team in general. We got Austin Reedy, Benson, Tyler Murray, Tyler Warner, Roman. It's just a good group of guys. We work very, very well together. We feed good information off of each other. Even having Benson, my teammate in second place, was huge. Even on that restart, it's like, Benson, just give me 5, 6, 7 laps here to kind of just settle down, and then if you want to come for the win, come for the win, but just give me a little bit to settle down. So huge, big thank you to Benson just for letting me find my groove.
Well, we certainly thank you for taking the time to join us. And of course, our congratulations go straight to you, Ryan. A big congratulations for your first win of the season here at Atlanta. And of course, we look forward to seeing you not only at Bristol, Phoenix, Daytona, but the rest of this season throughout. But for now, congratulations. We'll let you celebrate here from Hotlanta.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Ryan Steenbachers comes home away with his first win of 2021 in somewhat dominating fashion. 69 laps led. I think fairly fitting for the car he ran here tonight, but nonetheless a dominating run to the finish. But with a checkered flag winner in the actual race, we do have a Dash for Cash winner, and that comes second place with the 4 of Kyle Benson, who's caught up trackside with Francisco Baquea.
Kyle, it was a runner-up finish here tonight, and I know it doesn't have the same feeling it previously has had. You already won a race, and then more importantly, tonight, you got some cash winning the Dash for Cash. Can you just take us through that race and that charge you put on towards the end of their race right there?
I threw it everything I can. I mean, to be honest with you, going upside down on lap 1 and finishing second is okay. I'm okay with that. So, definitely it took a ride. But yeah, it was just more of keep the nose clean all night, especially after the wreck, and just kind of, if the cards played out right, use it to your advantage. But yeah, I mean, I threw everything I had in that last corner, and I thought it stuck, and I was pretty surprised. So I probably should use it a little bit earlier in the race. But when you got to throw it in there in the last lap, and you have a chance like that, you just got to take it. So.
And how was managing the tires with the car on that long run, micromanaging everything, trying to make sure that you had enough grip, but at the same time using the speed that the car had in order to keep position? Because we went a good maybe 80 laps under the green flag right there in the middle portion of the race.
Yeah, just trying to keep that sweet spot. Try to keep the tires and wear cool down to a minimum, and just kind of, just kind of the basic stuff. Yeah, I mean, you can get a little slide out of it, which was nice, especially in the middle of the corner. Middle of the corner was deadly all night, especially on the top or bottom. So, I mean, it was really more just kind of holding your line and hoping it sticks. So, I mean, especially when it gets that slick, and especially with it being Hotland in Georgia and track temps 120 degrees, 365 days of the year. So, there's a lot of wear on the track.
And who do you have to thank for being able to put on a performance like you did tonight, from flipping on lap 1 and getting to the finish line just behind the race leader? It takes a lot of people to have a car last like that.
Well, I like to thank the AMR safety crew for putting the car back on the 4 wheels, but just the guys at Big Fast and everybody that makes this league go. And yeah, man, just have another fun night. Good win to Steen. They come back after a pretty long hiatus, so I'm good with them, man. We always race each other clean. So yeah, but that's about it.
Before I let you go, I'm not entirely sure if the field was informed before the event, but iRacing did release the next gen Cup cars for 2022, so they're up for purchase right now, and I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Where do you think that Dash for Cash money is going? But yeah,
Good
man,
money being spent already.
yeah, yeah.
All right,
Thanks, man. I'm hyped for it, man. I'm really, really ready for it.
all right. Well, thanks for taking the time with us, Kyle, and we wish you luck moving next week into the Bristol Motor Speedway.
All right, thank you.
Kyle Benson, driver on the number 4, winner of the Dash for Cash, and already disclosed rather where his money is going to. The 1195 purchase of maybe a Ford Mustang, maybe a Toyota Camry, maybe a Camaro for Gen 7. Who knows? Nonetheless,
all three.
He or all three, he comes up with the money nonetheless in a great points effort and still maintains strong to the playoff points lead. And we'll take a moment now to head back to the final driver interview of the night, and it will be with the 75 of Nicholas Vazuti. I think, fitting enough, sporting a Ford GT350 car that is now the GT500 in Gen number 7. However, he ends up third at the end of it all here from Atlanta. We'll be trackside with him shortly. Bring him in to the broadcast booth. And Nicholas, this was at least he might have gone. we dragged him in, but I think he already left immediately. We'll try to bring in once more. And Nicholas, this race for you at least was sort of up and down. Again, like with Kyle Benson, an early incident kind of took some of you guys out, burned the faster pair, but you all started to climb in position, and that final pitch strategy really made things worthwhile. But for you, walk us through how this night went for you overall and how it changed from what looked very bleak to one that looked very promising near the end of the top 3.
Yeah, we really didn't know what we had until about halfway through because we were running with damaged car, trying to save faster pair as long as we could. But when it looked like the incidents were getting sorted out and stuff was going to go green, then we went ahead and burned it. So it took a little bit of figuring out along the way what was working, what wasn't working with the clean car, and how to manage restarts on fresh tires. We really didn't have anything. I don't think I had anything for Ryan or Benson there at the end of the race, but always happy to come home. P3 was kind of just keeping my distance, not falling back too far, hoping they were going to get together and make a mistake. But, considering where we started with the race and having to go a lap down, I cannot complain about ending up in the top 3.
And certainly this good finish obviously puts you a little bit short of the Dash for Cash, but obviously does pose great for the point standings. You come home, or at least we're going into this race, 2 points shy of the playoff points lead, of course, with your fair share of wins already in this season. Walk us through at least your expectations of what this playoff kind of lookout was going to look for you going into this race, and knowing that it was 4 Dash for Cash, and also just how you're going to walk away from Atlanta going into Bristol, Phoenix, and Daytona, knowing that you're going to most likely have a spot in the top 10 for the playoffs, but also trying to maintain it and possibly take some momentum going into the run for the championship.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of guys out here every week are just playing quick. So for me, it's always about consistency, trying to put yourself there at the end. And from there, you never know what happens. So I think it would be great to get another win just to get some extra playoff points carrying in to help you through to that final round. Don't know if it'll happen or not, but I just focus on, staying out of trouble as much as possible, learning what the car will and won't give me, and then putting yourself at the end. So if opportunity presents itself, you're able to jump on it.
We definitely took yourself on the opportunity here tonight, coming home with a 3rd place finish. Before we let you go here from Atlanta to go to Bristol next week, is there anybody you'd just like to thank for making this possible? Any teams, any sponsors, or anybody else that you just wanted to give the love and shout-outs to for this effort?
Shout out to my sponsor, iVox, letting me race every week around the West Coast, so sometimes there's still work going on. Shout out to my girlfriend, happy 8th anniversary. I know she's watching. And shout out to Brandon Banks, who we had some really good clean racing side by side for many laps at a time with him tonight. So that was a lot of fun. Always great to race with these guys.
Well, it certainly was a lot of fun watching you out of the racetrack, Nick. Congratulations on your 3rd place finish, and we go from the 1.5 mile to the last great Coliseum, hoping that'll be a lot of fun, and we wish the best of luck going into next week. Congratulations, though, tonight here.
Thanks, Kenneth.
That is Nicholas Vazuti, 3rd place at the end of it all, coming home in that, of course, in that third spot behind your two leaders. And of course, I mentioned him with the playoff situation that he's in, the 2 wins he already has this season. And surely maybe will pay off now going into the final stretch of races. But I will turn it back to you, Francisco, and our recap of this event in its entirety. A lot of quick yellows, a lot of cars tumbling over, a lot of excitement in the middle of the race with the Gen 7 NASCARs that were released on iRacing. But ultimately, in the end, we had a long green flag run that gave Ryan Steenbachers that chance to go from crashing in the beginning of the race to winning at the end of it all for the first win. And now we probably have a jumbled playoff grid with drivers with wins, drivers who are trying to point their way in, and now going into Bristol, Phoenix, Daytona, 3 chaotic races that we'll see before we even start the playoffs for this season.
You mentioned it's been a crazy day for all things considered, Kenneth, on Cinco de Mayo, and we still have Bristol left next week. You mentioned the jumbled up playoff picture. It's like if Bristol needed to be included in that to jumble it up even more. So we still got a ways to go before we truly decide who's going to make the playoffs and who doesn't. And you just mentioned it, Bristol, Phoenix, Daytona, they're all capable of jumbling up and spitting somebody out right before their eyes. So it's going to be interesting just seeing how they attack it. I believe next week is 300 laps around Bristol. So that's going to be a race of mental endurance. That's really what it's going to be, mental endurance. So it's going to be tough for these guys, and that's probably the race I have circled more so than either Phoenix or Daytona. Even though Daytona's the cutoff race, I think next week at Bristol is the one that you have to maximize at because it's just that chaotic.
Surely be a lot of endurance, whether it be physically or mentally, at the last great Coliseum. The drivers will be ready to duel next Wednesday night at about 9:10 p.m. Eastern. Of course, you'll find all that coverage right here on MaxSpeedTV. As always, we'll be giving you the run all the way to the championship event at the Charlotte Oval. And we'll have it all for you right here with all the coverage. Every single race you can find right here. All the previous races as well in this season, you can also find here on MaxSpeedTV. Well, that'll do it for us here from the Atlanta Motor Speedway, Hot Atlanta as we would call it. A happy Cinco de Mayo for everyone out there. And of course, a happy Mother's Day for this weekend as well. Gotta give a big thanks as well to everybody as a part of the race council. Tyler Murray, Nick Vazuti, Roman Long, Craig Lonsarger, and a handful of others that make this series possible each and every week. And for all of us at MaxSpeedTV, and for my colleague in the booth, Francisco Bacallao, my name is Kenneth Bueno saying so long and good night from Hot Atlanta. We'll see you next week where we flicker on the lights to duel at the Bristol Motor Speedway.